All right, everyone. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I'm sorry. It's afternoon. Happy Tuesday. I am Solomon Sonya. It's really good to have you in our class today. So we'll get started in about 1 minute. So I just want to say welcome to the class, and we're about to get started. All right, and as we are about to begin, I am sharing the screen. If you can give me a message in the chat that the screen is working, you can see the screen. It should say, Welcome to HackOn, Masterclass, Intro to Network Discovery and Exploitation. All right, Nicholas, thank you very much for the message. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited. I am happy to have you here. All right, everyone, let's do this. Okay, so this is our overview for the workshop for the next 2 days after today. We'll start in three phases that will go through some of this discovery and then exploitation. The first phase, we'll do advanced scanning. So we start out from scanning. We see how can we perform scanning as your attackers would normally try and scan and then exploit a machine. Then tomorrow, we'll get into some vulnerability scanning, vulnerability discovery. We'll do additional enumeration, and then we'll get started with our exploitation primer. So the exploitation is how do we use an active method with common open source tools right now to access and to exploit a vulnerable system slash vulnerable computers on the network. And then phase three, exploitation. So full exploitation using the same frameworks, exploits, and then causing effects operation. So which types of effects slash impacts, and we'll talk about that later today. We'll see what can you do once you gain access to the machine. What are some common techniques that the attacker should do? And it's also beneficial for us to know what the attacker does, and then what should we do as defenders to better protect our enterprise from being compromised by your malicious actors out there. And then our courseware. So our courseware to download the curriculum that we're working on, there are two links that we have for the virtual machines. This is one right here, if you see my mouse. This is using our Dropbox. And right now we have updated where our curriculum is posted, at least the virtual machines. That is here at this link. So now what I would like to do is as I talk and wave my hands a little bit, I'd like us to complete the download of the virtual machines. So if I can ask in the chat, is there anyone who does not have the virtual machine yet? Okay, okay, still downloading. Okay, perfect, I understand. Give me 1 second. All right, we'll go ahead and pause for, okay, I see, all right, two people are still downloading. All right, let's go. Let's pause here to at least ensure that we have the download complete. And so what I will do, let's go. Let's do this. Okay, so as we're doing the download, if I can see, also it's good to see a few names back. Or good to see you back in the class. Let me ask, for those who are downloading, how far along are you? Like, so there are 3 downloads. How many do we have downloaded? Just getting a status. How many are there? How many is what's remaining? Okay, good. Good. Torstein, good to see Callie's running for you. Good. Okay, I think I saw Victoria.
9
Okay,
5
we're downloading
8 8
Callie.
5 6 9.
We'll wait a little bit. Okay. Okay, I see. And um, okay, as I'm answering the question, to use a fresh Linux. So for today, actually, yes, if you do have Linux installed, fresh installed in VirtualBox, you can. What I will do on the slide, let me show you. I want to make sure. Are you still able to see my screen? Okay. Okay. Good. Well, good. Well, here I am. If you can see me, okay. All right. So what I'll do, let me go ahead and share the screen again. Okay, there we go. I should be sharing my screen. Can you see this? Okay, excellent. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the commentary. Here, also in our for our presentation, we put a Google Drive together that's right here. So if you can go to this folder real quick, let me see if I can get that to load. Let me copy that. All right, here we go. Okay, so here, once you click on the link, let me make sure I show you again. So I click on this Google Share, and then from the Google Share, I have the slides. We have the slides for today that we're going over. There's a PowerPoint and then a PDF version. This is the initial setup, how to set up and configure our virtual machines. Then we have the network discovery part 1 that we'll go into. And after our network discovery, do a bit more advanced scanning. So that's here in part 2. So there is a few dependency programs that we require in this session. So if you do have your own Kali installed, oh, absolutely. Okay, at the bottom, I put the, oh, sorry. Let me send this to everybody. There we go. Okay, at the bottom of the chat, I put the link to the Google Drive. And here what I'll do, in a few moments, you will see a dependencies folder. In the dependencies folder, if you have your own Kali Linux, if you'll download the zip drive, place that zip drive on your desktop and unzip it. And that should be the remaining programs. And there are a couple of commands that will run to update the machine, but we should be fine in that case, since Kali might take a while and you might have a Kali Linux. Otherwise, just continue to download as we go through. We'll get everyone caught up to be at the same time. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to add in the dependencies now. All right, I am back. Let me refresh our share drive. Back your view. Okay, here we are. So now in our share, there is scans, slides, and then dependencies. So inside the dependencies, if you have Kali already installed, if you download this dependencies file, Kali dependencies, and then if you extract it onto your desktop, just a separate folder should come out saying dependencies or Kali dependencies, and that should be sufficient. And then we'll run through that today and tomorrow, the programs that we have installed. Okay, and now continuing here, so that's our share. Virtual conference, everyone made it to the virtual conference. Congratulations, well done. Zoom meeting, and then at the bottom here, as we mentioned, this is the other link, other location for the downloads. Now, as we progress through this workshop, there are many resources out there that are available. And the resources that we use and we compile together in this workshop are included here, such that if you want to go further in detail, if you want to learn more, you want to explore more, especially from the references that I put in our slides, in our chats, in our discussions, then you'll be able to find them here. Out of at least these 6 books might get you started with many of the exercises that we'll complete in this workshop. And something else that I do on the slides, at the bottom right side here, where it says notes, I'll place special references here. So that is, if there's something useful or I'm taking information from a specific slide and I'd like you to have that reference, then I include those details right down below. So whenever that pops up, whatever's on the slides is a reference right down there. All right, so if we do quick introduction so you have an idea of who I am. So I'm assistant professor in computer science at the United States Air Force Academy, and I also currently perform cyber operations training. So that cyber operations training is pretty nice and exciting. It's always lovely to be in the classroom and to work with other experts as yourself so we can learn from each other. Before that position, before those 2 positions, I was a research director at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. It was nice getting to do research there. And then before that position, I was the director of intrusion response for the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team, responding to all of the attacks, cyber attacks out there. It was my responsibility as well as my team to go and remediate the network from computer vulnerabilities. Then before that position, I was a senior network defense manager. I'm starting to learn and then grow up from there. Then before those positions, I was a software reverse engineer, and I'm still a reverse engineer. I still do reverse engineering of malicious samples and also workshops on how to do reverse engineering. It's a tough skill, but it's a lovely one to have in your toolkit to respond to any malware that is out there, at least to try and figure out what's happening there. Then before that position, as I learned to be a software reverse engineer, I was a software developer, education down there at the bottom. And then hobbies. I love to cybersecurity, especially exploitation and defensive paradigms. I do research either in exploiting machines and then how to defend them and then how to exploit them again. It's a lovely time to be on that seesaw, but it's exciting because we all get to grow together as we learn more in the process. All right, so let's talk about some programmatics for our masterclass here. 1, scanning the illusion versus the reality. So I say that because the illusion as TV shows, so if we're like, all right, I'm going to be just like they do on TV, whatever show is out there, it's always interesting how when you're watching cyber on TV, people will do things and there's like colorful screens here, the screen rotates to another super nice, fancy graphical user interface. We'll call those GUIs, insert cyber noises here, access granted, access denied. Oh, I'm not in, I can't do it. Access granted, now I can finally go in and pivot and exploit to another area. And now in a second, all these people who are trying to hack machines and whatnot, like they all have the diagrams and the schematics of the buildings that they want to go through, or they can use all the cameras at once. That's TV. That's an illusion. So yes, you are correct. There are many screens here in my office. Yes. So I do live in the matrix. But sometimes when I come out of the matrix to be here, I'm like, this is the reality again. And it's not that glamorous when you're really hacking and exploiting machines. And that's the first thing I'm just trying to say. It's not as glamorous as TV shows. It's definitely not as fast as TV loves to show you. In a second, like I tell you, in very few seconds, boom, I just gained access to the bank. Now I'm in the bank vault. All right, I'm going to press this button, and the bank vault opens just like that. I'm a super hacker, yeah. It doesn't happen like that in real life. So that's the illusion. The reality is hacking, scanning, exploiting machines takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time because you are meticulous to read and to view to see how to access computers. There are no beautiful screens and things that move around whenever we're exploiting computers. In fact, we usually have black and white text, text that scrolls on the screen. You press some things, you look at your notes, you hope, you hold your breath, you say a few curse words because your initial attack did not work, and then you research and try it until finally you hopefully gain access to a system or someone somehow uses the tools that you implanted out there to give you access into that computer machine, and now you can pivot from that point. We are usually most comfortable in black and white or whatever text base that's being referenced back and forth. That's usually where I am most comfortable whenever we talk about exploiting vulnerable systems out there. And the reason, one of the reasons out there, one of the reasons for that, and I'm like, look, I love black and white. I don't like all these fancy GUIs and things and whatever that TV is going to show, is because of bandwidth. Perhaps in our slide for tomorrow, I will talk about my postulates on how attackers are ever found. It's only one of three. So the first thing, to find an attacker, usually they were greedy. Either they were greedy, they went too fast, or they were underskilled, like they did not know the experts that they're using. But when I talk about greed and speed, if I have access to a computer machine and I see all those nice fancy colors and screens, that's actually bandwidth. There is a cost of what you're looking at when you're exploiting a distant end machine. The more I see, the more color I have, that's the more bytes in information that has to be exchanged from the remote end to my system. The more information that has to be exchanged, the larger the likelihood of me being detected, because if you have some sort of baseline detections on your network, or you just see one system is sending out more bandwidth than all of the others, this could lead somebody into looking to see, something is off, let me investigate further. However, text, 1s and 2 bytes at a time, that's much harder to detect across a large enterprise. But whenever we go through these scans and these exploitation, black and white, that's what we get to work on. That's really what our scanning and exploitation looks like. And then patience, we just wait for a while until our scan/attacks work. Hopefully they work, and then we move on to the next activity. Okay. So sometimes it's fire and forget, and then we review later. So what I mean by that, the fire and forget, since I told you earlier, some of the scans just take a while. Sometimes you will fire a scan, leave it to run for some time, and then go off and check something else. And then when that's done, we will come back and view the results if it's finished, if it presents anything useful for us. Sometimes it does, most of the time it doesn't. So what do we do at that point? We try a different attack or a different entry mechanism to see what are the vulnerabilities, and then to hopefully plan our attack to exploit computer systems. And then patience. So patience is very, very important. Patience and persistence. That's important because you have to wait. Some of these things are going to take time. You want things to take time. The slower you are, that means the less bytes that you are sending from your attacker machine to your victim machine, the slower, the less likelihood you're going to be detected from some of those baseline/anomaly-based detections. Because on large enterprise networks, packets are, terabytes of information is leaving by the hour. So if you're only sending 2 or 3 bytes every 20, 30 minutes or so, very, very small packets, it's going to be hard to find you in the haystack of all the packets that are going on across the network. But now if you're big and say, I want to exploit everything at once, download everything, have remote desktop running, and then trying to attack all the other machines at the same time, you're going to raise the likelihood of being detected. So yeah, patience and persistence is key. Right, now this class. So what we do, we amalgamate multiple open source tools and extract unique results for the analysis. There are lots of tools out there. Everyone's attack, everyone's exploit will be slightly different. Your mileage will vary based on use. And so just by that, we will show you some of the tools out there, from our basic level to seeing what some of your attackers might do, but there are many others. So we want to expose you to these, and then you can pivot off and continue your research, learn from other tools out there. And then open source tools. So open source tools, that's what we're using in this class. Our open source It is a what WYSIWYG, as some will pronounce it, WYSIWYG. That is what you see is what you get. In our class, as we're using open source tools, some of the benefits, it's free. Many of them are community used, community updated, so it's pretty well done. Because other guys will say, like, I want to write this tool is really good, I want to update some of the resources, and then we continue the development of certain tools that are out there. So it's some tools are as good as the any professional version that you would purchase. Others, not so much, because again, it's free. It's on a person's time. Whatever it looked like, they made something, they upload it out there, others use it, things change. Operating systems change, service packs change, different versions are updated. So a tool that worked yesterday might not work again tomorrow. That's just what you get from free open source tools versus your expensive paid tools. But no need to fear. All of our tools are going to work most of the time. In the previous slide on our Outlook, I do have our, there we go, our live demo gremlin. So that's this guy. This little useless thing. Whenever we try stuff on our own, things work. We're like, all right, that's good, it works. I'm going to include it on the slide. Or it works, I'm going to present it to others. However, for some reason, whenever you get to do things live, things break. Whatever reason, it's like, look, I'm not going to put anything that I know breaks on the slide. There's no teaching value there. But sometimes in our lab, as we do demos, if whatever our tool concept breaks, it doesn't work right, we will do our best to fix it. However, in the slides, I put all of the instructions that we're going to execute, so there is no knowledge lost, as well as on our Google Drive for today/tomorrow, the scans that we are working, you actually already have a copy of the scans. So in case this fails, whatever reason, our virtual machines is corrupted, whatever, right? Again, live demos, things happen. You have everything that we're going to cover. It's already downloaded for you. And so tomorrow or at another time, when the virtual machine is working properly, you can work on the exploit yourself and then compare with the actual scan results that you have a copy of. All right, so now as we've set the stage for establishing expectations in this course. So one, again, very, very important. It's important to understand that expertise is developed over time via personal and practical experience, group, and self-study. So this course, we're going to do our best. I will tell you as much as I know, as well as from the HackOn team. But still, this requires you to invest that time. You know, becoming the expert takes time. It is a deliberate study. So hopefully from this, you will continue in that growth to increase your skill sets further than today. So some of the methods that are employed, so I like this one. What I'm saying here is the methods that are employed by the attacker, the person who's trying to gain access to a vulnerable system, the methods employed by the attacker to expose a vulnerability, to exploit, are oftentimes indistinguishable from the methods employed by the defender to identify vulnerabilities on the network for remediation. So what I'm saying is, the person who's trying to exploit that machine or that network that you are trying to protect, and the person who's also trying to defend it to determine what vulnerabilities are out there, most of the time they look very, very similar across a network. That is good. I say that is good because if we understand the common techniques by the common actors out there, many of them out there are going to go through many of the techniques that we'll discover today. If you understand how to use those, and especially if you can uncover a vulnerability on your system, since this is the same method that attackers are going to use to exploit, you find that vulnerability, you can remediate that. And now reduce the exposure, reduce the ability of a large-scale compromise on your system because you have the same level of knowledge as the attacker. If you have the knowledge of the attacker, you can defend your systems better. That's what we're trying to say, you know, from this slide. So that's pretty exciting. And then the class, expected to expose you to common tools and techniques used to discover those vulnerabilities on your system, as we've said that multiple times. Some tools are well known. You all will know many of the tools that we are performing. You would have heard of many of the tools that we're performing. And hopefully some of these tools are going to be new. That's good because there's learning involved in there. So at least what we will show, what is new to you, hopefully this will add in your vulnerability assessment and discovery abilities. And then the expectation for you, you all as the expert is to build upon this knowledge, expand your capabilities to hopefully better identify vulnerabilities across your systems and protect them from your large scale attacks that we see on the news day in and day out. Now, another disclaimer, please, I beg of you, use your knowledge wisely, because we are showing how common people, open source tools and techniques, everything that we are showing here, is from some exploration wisdom that we bring on into this workshop, as well as those resources that we gave you. All of those books, the attacks that we're showing here are found in one of those open source concepts, tools, techniques, tactics, and procedures. But I do want to ask, please use your knowledge wisely. Scans can be dangerous. When we get into the more advanced portion of the scanning for today, you will see that some scans may actually disable the system that we're going after. Here in our lab environment, we are using virtual machines to go through the attacks just fine. But in the real world, sometimes if you're performing a scan, you can actually take out the network. You can take out the domain that you're scanning just by doing an assessment. That domain can crash. War story, like it actually happened last year. I was doing an assessment for a separate company, and I was even starting with our vulnerability assessment. Vulnerability scanning, just as we're doing in this lab today and tomorrow. So as I'm scanning, all of a sudden the domain goes offline. I'm like, wait, what? Did I lose connectivity? So I checked the distant end that I'm scanning. Like that server crashed. Then the individual I was doing the scan from was like, hey, can you check your server real quick? How's it looking? I can't access it. They're like, oh, the server seems to be down. It's like, all right, well, I will try again. I'll try again later. Thankfully, the system rebooted itself, came back online. But I'm just trying to say that it is interesting that even these scans, because of the way that we're sending information, we can compromise the intended effect, the intended operation of those distant ends. So it can be dangerous and take out the systems. So please, only perform scans against the systems that you have permission to assess. You have permission to assess these, you go ahead and scan away, because at least we're learning. Or your own systems for sure, scan ad nauseum, because you want to see like, hey, what could be vulnerable and learn further in the process. I will take poetic liberty, and for HackCon, we have a few scans against HackCon. They're safe. They're not going to take hackcon.org out. We will say, yes, okay, thank you. Thanks for the permission. Mr. Suhail's in the room. Appreciate you, my friend. All right. So let's go into understanding the attack domain. And if I pause here, let me pause just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue. Are there any questions so far? If there are any questions, if you need at any time for me to stop, explain a concept, as always, please put a message in the chat, or speak up. If you want to talk, please talk. I wish we were together, but due to this pandemic, we have to be apart only for a little bit. But soon we will be together once again. Now, if you do want to talk, please, just let me know which questions you have, and then I'll answer them as best as I can. For the downloads, is anyone experiencing an issue with the downloads? At least the download is still continuing. Okay, I'm not seeing any negative responses in the chat. So, okay, let's go ahead and continue. So here we are. We are talking about understanding the attack domain. This is level setting the room. Let's go over the methodologies of attacking and exploiting a computer machine, because we will follow these. Knowing the methodologies, ensuring we're all on the same page, we will follow these steps in order to gain access to the system, exploit, pivot, do all the things, do all the things. This is the steps that we take in order to make those to be successful. So understanding the domain. So this is your big picture. As attacker, anybody who wants to exploit, there are usually three main big picture objective items that we're trying to exploit. or trying to carry out whenever we attack a machine. First one is get in. Whatever that get in is, how do we gain access to the system and or information that we're looking for? You gain that initial foothold, and then you act. What do you plan to do? I want to do something. Get in, act, pivot, paralyze, steal, plunder, pillage, or move on, whatever it is. What do you plan to do? What are the objectives of the attack? We first have to gain a foothold, get there. Once we are there on that system, distant and act, do something, and then potentially stay in. So how long do I want to stay in? How do I evade detection, go into stealth and persistence, etc.? This is the third main item that we'd like to execute: get in, act, and stay in. Now, our 5-step methodology approach is similar to this. I like this slide. I like talking about it because, again, this gets us all on the same page. So when we talk about phases of the attack, your 5 main phases of the direct attack. I mentioned this is the direct attack because there are other ways to exploit computer machines that are not, they just don't fit properly in the direct method of attack. So for one, we talk about reconnaissance. We always do reconnaissance. Attackers, exploiters, there is always reconnaissance. It might seem basic, it might seem boring, but it is actually the most important step because this gives us information. It gives us information about the people we're exploiting. It gives us information about the systems we're exploiting. It gives us information about potential attack vectors and other areas that we want to explore in the attack. So there is reconnaissance that we're going to do some research about the system. We'll do a few basic reconnaissance steps once we get into our virtual machines. Then we go into scanning. So scanning, reach out, touch the system. There are 2 types of scans. There is active and passive type of scanning. So again, as we talk about the direct method, this is the direct attack in which we do active scanning. So active scanning, I'm probing the machine. I am sending a packet. I'm sending information from my systems over to the victim machine / target system. I use those words interchangeably. So I'm sending information over there, and I'm going to view the responses back. So that's our active scanning. And then we do reconnaissance, information about the system, scan, know what's up, what port services are likely, my entry vector into the victim machine. And then penetration, gain access to the system. Exploit, how am I going to exploit the system? So research, scan, all right, I know my entry mechanism, try and penetrate that system. And we will use our very common exploitation framework, Metasploit, that's out there. It's ubiquitous. Most people, if we talk about an introduction to scanning, introduction to exploitation, Metasploit is listed in the same paragraph because it's a suite of tools and capabilities out there that we can use to exploit systems. So we will use that in our lab. We will get there either towards the latter part of tomorrow, or tomorrow's Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday for sure. We're living in the Metasploit environment. Now, once we're in, we act. So penetrate, this is our action inside the machine, and then privilege. So either we want to escalate our privileges, pillage, steal, infiltrate information from the victim machines on the network, pivot. Do I want to move on to other machines, move on to other systems, other targets out there that we see? Maybe we want to paralyze, destroy the system. So these are some of the effects that we would like to talk about once we're inside the victim machine. And then we have a loop. So this is not just you go all the way down and then you stop. This is a cyclical process. Like we continue, scan, research, as we pivot to another machine. Now I'm on another machine or I'm in another process. We perform additional scanning. We're looking for other entry mechanisms, ways that we might be able to exploit our privileges further, and then we continue down the attack. Again, we continue down the cycle. Paralyze, destroy some of those machines, and then look for other machines to paralyze potentially. And that's the nature of the attack. Now, on this side, we mention this as privileges because we escalate privileges. Perhaps we were, usually when you gain your initial foothold, you're going 9 times out of 10, you're going to be as user level. But some of our attacks, some of the additional effects that we want to carry out, these require administrative privileges. So if we can find a way to escalate our privileges to the administrator or to root level, carry out more attacks as possible, do additional scanning, penetrate another vulnerable system, vulnerable service, vulnerable machine out there. And then staying in. Now staying in, this is our stealth and persistence and covering our tracks. So if we've gained access, and as I say, your mileage is going to vary. It depends on what you want to carry out in the attack. But now, if I do want to remain active in the system, usually I want to retain my foothold in that system, I will do stealth and persistence. How do I be as stealthy as possible? One of the things is reduce the bandwidth, reduce the information that is exchanged between me and the distant end system. If only you can slow down, be slow, be careful, be methodical. It makes detection much, much, much harder for your network defenders out there. It's just common knowledge, common practice. And then covering our tracks. There is a principle in forensics called the Locard principle. The Locard principle states for every action, there is a trace. So everything you do, there is a way to find a trace of your actions. Every single action, every single activity that is done, there is a trace somewhere. But knowing where those traces are, we will do our best to mitigate things. So if I know what the defender is looking for, I will cover my tracks to defeat the common defender from being able to determine that I'm in the network. This is our main 5 stages of the attack, from your reconnaissance, scanning, penetration, stealth and persistence, and then covering the track. This is the active method, and also this method was developed years ago. Years ago, like at the dot-com boom, that's when these attack methods were created and exploited. Because computers, as they were initially designed, common knowledge, they were designed based on a system of trust. The internet, called the ARPANET initially, was meant to exchange information, send it from area to area, university to university, groups of trusted people. I want to send information to you, and you send to me so we can share, so we can be better in the long run. That was the intent and the nature of our internet that we use. But this also means that this system that was built on a system of trust assumed people communicating across the network were trustworthy. Systems communicating across the network are not going to exploit my other machines. Thus, when this system of these phases of the attack were developed, it was back in the time when from my computer in the United States, the great country of Texas, I could have reached out to everyone wherever you are directly, reached out through your router and touched your machine. We could have done this 20, 25 years ago. And thus these phases of the attack were extremely valid way back then. Yesteryear, this worked because, again, I could have touched every single system out there. Now I can't. If I were to even try right now and reach out to touch your machine, God help us, I should not be able to touch your system. I shouldn't be able to see or determine what operating system that you're running from the direct method, from the direct approach. Now, if I can ask a question in the chat, please tell me, why is it that I cannot touch your machine from here? I cannot immediately scan and determine you have 5 or 6 machines on your network. I can't scan and determine your enterprise has 100 or 200 users out there with so many different services. Why can't I do that attack right now? Correct. So natting is one of your main reasons. Your NAT, so your router does your network address translation. One of the reasons was because of starvation. At the beginning, when the internet was designed, we did not expect to have over 4 billion IP address machines out there. Because your current IP version 4, there's, if you do the math, 2 to 32, I think it's like 2 to the 32 power, because the 32-bit addressing scheme. That's only 4-point-something billion machines. Back then, that was thought to be, there will never be that many machines out there. However, we starved those IP addresses very, very quickly when more machines started to come online. So one of the things that we do to preserve IP addresses is one entire corporation, instead of having hundreds or thousands of IP addresses that are visible on the network, there's only one address that's visible on the network, and that's your front-facing IP address on your router, as your router reaches over to your ISP, etc. But behind, there could be hundreds or thousands of machines, and that router does your translation for you. So that is precisely why I should not be able to just IP address scan. And from my house, I don't know what your IP address is. My IP address on this system is 192.168. something. I cannot scan 192.168. something and reach you, because by nature, that 192.168, that's one of the private IP addresses that is not routable across the internet, because it is supposed to work for our network address translation. Very good. Odd gut. I'm sorry, and my American English, I'm not pronouncing your name properly, but correct. Thank you for your response. Natting. Another aspect that prevents me from being able to directly attack computer machines out there is firewalls. You have firewalls and different enterprise devices that will keep me from being able to reach out and touch you. But the next question is, if there is network security out there, you can't directly go out and scan, how are our systems, how are they continuing to be compromised and exploited on a daily basis? Well, the reason is the anatomy of the attack has been updated. So talking about the anatomy of the attack, I'm showing that right here, in which we still have our old 5-step method in exploiting computer machines, but some things have changed. So across the right side, this is still your 5 steps. See, you have your reconnaissance, scanning, penetration, your actions that you are executing, and then your stealth and persistence, and covering your tracks. Stealth, persistence, covering your tracks, maintaining access. All of these are across here on the right side, but the paradigm has changed for me to exploit computer machines. So currently, if I were ever conscripted to go out and exploit a machine or exploit a network, do a vulnerability assessment against the networker. So it's like, hey, I want you to exploit my computers, find the vulnerabilities so we can better secure our systems out there. Oh, sorry, and if I pause real quick, and that's correct. And Benji, you're right, Pat, for your port address translation, that is correct. We'll just say Matt and Pat. Sorry, I didn't see your message previously. Okay, so back here. So as I'm talking about right now, again, if I'm asked, hey, exploit my computers, like tell me what the vulnerabilities are so I can make my systems more secure. From your previous slide, whenever we show these here, reconnaissance is always done. There's always reconnaissance in research, but I will not go directly into scanning. Like, okay, what's your IP address? What's your domain? Let me start to scan your machines. Absolutely not. That is definitely not where I will start. I will actually say, oh, okay, you want me to exploit your network? All right, tell me, who are the people on your network? Let me do some research about your domain. And let me see if I can identify the users. What are the users going to do? What actions might the users perform? Because perhaps I can exploit the people and allow you to carry me onto that vulnerable network or so. Because the user, exploiting the user is far more cheaper than writing a specific exploit. Exploits are expensive to write. New exploits, 0 days, they're expensive and they take a lot of time. They take a lot of time to create. Now, if I want to exploit your systems, depending on the things that are listed in our contract, I will still go out to the users first because I might not need to create a unique exploit. I might be able to use a common tool and allow the user to take me onto that system and then pivot from there. Usually your enterprises are, it's like the M&M candy, or it's a hard outer shell. Firewall, natting / padding, different routers that are out there, different systems that are preventing me from directly attacking from the outside, the internet cloud. I'm in the internet cloud. So from the internet cloud coming onto your machine, there are devices that should stop me. But usually once you are inside that network, then it's much softer, much less protection mechanisms that are there because we assume the systems here are safe and they're not exploited to begin with. So that's why I will exploit the user and allow you to carry me onto your network and then pivot from that point because it's much easier. Then we can refer back to our direct attack that we showed on the previous slide, and those are fully valid. Like those steps fully valid to let you access and exploit computers from the standpoint of I am already on your network. But social engineering, this is a thing. This is where a lot of people are compromised. A lot of people will bring you onto the network if you know how to exploit the user. Additionally, we'll also look to staging the exploits. So when I say staging, here I'm trying to initially throw the exploit at you. Reconnaissance, scan, penetrate, directly try and attack and exploit that machine. And here are some steps that we can carry out those scanning on the right. But if I stage, this is also in a separate slide we call it the watering hole. In fact, I didn't include it in this one. But there's a watering hole type of attack in which I don't even try and exploit your system directly because I can't. I cannot reach out and touch you. But if I can put things out there and now allow you to come to me. So this is our malicious downloads. Your malicious downloads like really hit the limelight back in like 2013, 2014. Many systems, browsers would love for you to throw a drive-by download. They'll say, oh, okay, no problem. You want me to exploit? You want me to execute the exploit? I will do it for you. And now that browser is compromised, and then it just gives me a foothold onto that machine. Watering hole attacks, this is where I do put my exploits out there, but I allow you to come to me. You either visit my site that is compromised, or I compromise the site, I put my exploits out there. When you visit it to either download something that's useful or whatever, you went for that site, you can now bring me onto your machine. So that's just watering hole. I'm waiting for you to visit me, common place where people are, and then I attack and exploit from that point. Or I will look for other ways. So phishing, let me try and attack the user, go after individuals, and see if you can bring them onto your network, a form of social engineering. Cross-site scripting, I compromise websites out there. When you also visit the website, you might activate the attack to again bring you onto the network or release information that you otherwise should not have been released to you. Exploit vulnerable protocols. Have, of course, your Trojan malware, your Trojan malicious software. Insider threat is a thing. Definitely, when we look at the impacts of Edward Snowden, there are many insiders, malicious insiders out there. Many people. This could also be a way to get access to systems. I'm recalling, and we'll take a break here in about 2 or 3 minutes, but I want to tell this story real quick. So one of the Sony attack. It was one of the Sony attacks in which you had a malicious insider. These people, and according to the attribution relates it back to Korea. Relates this attack back to North Korea because Sony released a game that I think it was like a war game or something, like an army type of shoot, pew pew, bang bang type of shooting game. But the enemy was North Korea. North Korea was depicted as the people that you're going to shoot and just defeat the enemy in this game. So according to attribution, Koreans went to one of the Sony headquarters. They entered the building. They got onto some of the protected machines inside the development area. I mean, these guys were really, really good. And they uploaded their malicious software from in the building and then left. So now you had an insider, because usually your insiders are trusted. If you can make it through our security mechanisms, we have gates, we have key cards, we have badges, you have the security guy at the front. If you make it throughout all of these security checks, usually at that point we say you are trusted because at least you've been verified to this point. So with the Sony people, the malicious actors, they bypassed the verification mechanisms, planted their Trojans on machines, and then left. And their machines, the screens even like changed to show that no, for sure, like you all have just been hacked. And that was a really well done, highly sophisticated attack, but it was perpetrated by a malicious insider who came in to the area. Malicious insiders, they can either be trusted people in your network or someone who can come in from the outside and appear to be trusted. Hardware attacks. So hardware attacks are much harder to defeat against now. because the operating system runs on the hardware. The operating system has to rely on the hardware to run, to execute, so many things. But the hardware is at a lower, more trusted ring than the operating system. Operating system is envelops the hardware. Now there's Trojans on things that you already purchased. I'm buying a network card. I'm buying a USB device. A computer that I already purchased already has malware on it, and it's embedded in the motherboard. And nothing new here. This is what's released. If you look at your security forums, your Google security chats, this is constant now, in which malicious software is being identified at the hardware level. These are other areas still to compromise computers and compromise machines. And then embedded devices, other device that you put into your network. This could also lead to ways to exploit computers. So this is why, when I mentioned your attack method may not always work, your direct method, that's fine. You change and adapt your approach. And then last thing I'll mention on this, and then we'll go ahead and take about a 10-minute break. And hopefully by that point, our virtual machines are downloaded by that time. Yay. Last message on exploiting machines. So whenever we do talk about compromising machine, I'm going to exploit a machine, I'm going to own this, I'm going to pwn this system. You don't actually exploit a computer. I'm pointing to a computer machine, laptop, exploit this laptop. You do not exploit a laptop. Instead, you actually exploit a vulnerable service, or you exploit a vulnerable protocol to make something perform in ways it was not intended, and now you can hopefully carry out the stages of the attack. So this is where, when we say your anatomy of the attack, it is updated. We change the way that we attack machines to figure out what is that vulnerable service, what is going to be the vulnerable attack vector that I can use to gain access to the system and then exploit from that. Okay, so we are just about the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and take 10 minutes. Take 10 minutes, because staring at a screen, it's harder. Surprise is one of the research facts about this COVID thing is even after 1 hour staring at a screen, there's more mental fatigue that occurs than if we were together in person. I'm waving my hands all in the same space. So let's go ahead and take 10 minutes, please. Stand up, take a walk, and then come back so we can ensure that we are refreshed, and I'll see you in a few moments. All right, everyone, welcome back. I hope your break was refreshing. Let's go ahead and continue. Now, before we continue, I want to make sure a couple of things. One, am I projecting? Can you hear me? And also, can you see the screen? We're on the updated anatomy of a cyber attack. Okay, all right, good. All right. Thank you very much for the, for the confirmation. The worst thing is if you just see my mouth moving for 3 hours, and like, oh, I was muted the whole time. Well, okay, see you tomorrow. That would be terrible, and we would not let that happen. So, just like to verify those things. All right, thanks. Now, updated anatomy of the cyber attack. Are there any questions from what we've gone over so far? Okay, all right. I'm not seeing any questions. There was one we were talking about, Benji, you mentioned with the virtual machines, the share drive. No, you don't have to run it from the C drive. It's not an issue. The share was actually what I was using to import some tools into the system. And so when we go through the virtual machine, we can just remove that share link, and it's not an issue. It's just interesting how those artifacts persist on some of the systems. But yeah, we're fine. We're definitely fine. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm projecting well, sharing the screen. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the MITRE ATT&CK framework. I would like to show you, or for us to discuss, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, because this is a wealth of information for us as we wish to study, learn more about just cyber attacks as exploitation at large. So MITRE ATT&CK framework came about a few years ago, and it is really, really nice. I still learn new things from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So what is it? Well, it's a comprehensive list of observed real-world adversary tactics and techniques used during a cyber attack. What we will see in the MITRE ATT&CK framework, with it being a framework, there are different steps and things that can be used or employed by different groups of people. APTs, your advanced persistent threat actors out there, with your APTs being different groups, usually different groups of people, different groups of organizations that are carrying out attacks. Many types of attacks are very similar. We as human beings, we are actually creatures of habit. By being creatures of habit, there are often times that we do the same thing over and over again, because it has worked before, or because I have learned in this area based on the teacher of instruction. When we go out and do real world practicums, we will first start out with the methods that we have been taught. So your APTs constantly, as they grow and expand, there are many instances that through different types of attacks, you can recognize the same types of signatures from these threat actors out there. And so the MITRE ATT&CK framework puts many of these signatures and common characteristics together for people to view and to learn from. This also helps with attribution. Whenever looking at what types of attack is this, who might the attack actors be, as well as what might the attacker go after, what might they be trying to perform on the network. With that attribution, since I know that, okay, this type of attack, they like to only go after these types of systems. They like to only go after this type of information, or they exploit these types of vulnerable machines, whatever is their tactic, techniques, and procedure. If we can learn that, deduce that from the adversary, then it gives us more information to scan our enterprise to see are there other areas I might have missed because I'm only focused on this. This APT likes to also go after systems X, Y, and Z. Do I have those on my network? Let me scan those also and see perhaps those might be compromised as well. Okay? So that's what this framework is designed to show and to handle for us. And then attacks are displayed in a matrix, and that's why I kind of like wave my hands and say things expand, it goes down, it goes to the right. Really, really good. We'll go through that in a few moments here. But the attacks are displayed in matrices and that are arranged by attack stages, from the initial system attack, that's our initial foothold, reconnaissance, researching, all the way down through the exploitation, pivoting, pillage, etc. What are the common characteristics of that attack? Remember when we went through the updated anatomy of an attack? Those updated anatomy of an attack are included across the attack framework. And then it's intended to create a standard taxonomy. So when we talk about taxonomy, lexicon, vernacular, as we are identifying, we're doing research on exploitation machines, exploitation impacts, it's good to, I am here, I learned one way of doing reverse engineering, digital forensics, etc. You learn a different way of doing reverse engineering, forensics, remediation on computer machines. But us being able to share the standard taxonomy means, even though we learn differently, we can communicate the same and know that, hey, this attack is likely to do X, Y, and Z. We use the same vernacular on these systems. Then whenever I talk about my analysis on this current machine, I can share that with you. You know exactly where I am and what I mean because we are using the same taxonomy. So that's one of the aspects about the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then it's created out of a need to systematically characterize adversary behaviors. Lots of APTs are out there. Many of the techniques, capabilities, tactics, procedures are similar. So that's where we're trying to capture these and consolidate it into a single warehouse that others can learn from and also contribute to. And then it also visually arranges all of the tactics in known areas so you can easily understand the format. Tactics are shown across the top with various techniques and capabilities as you click inside to do additional research on the system. And at the bottom right-hand side, this is the link to the attack framework. So if I go next, this is just a visual, just a quick screen capture of what the attack framework looks like. You have reconnaissance, which tactics are used for reconnaissance. It also gives you information about potentially how to detect different types of attacks and how to defend different types of attacks. And then, as I mentioned, APTs, which APTs have been used utilizing these different types of attacks. If it's possible, they include it in the attack framework. Then resource development, which types of capabilities are going to be developed, how do they do this, how do they purchase, how do they release. Some of those tactics are known. They will update that in the resource development. Initial access, how do you gain that initial foothold into the system? In our updated anatomy of the attack, here you saw like drive-by downloads, the drive-by compromise. That's like where where a victim or target visits a website. They go to a website, they go somewhere, and then now that action results in a compromise without having to do anything else, just by visiting. Now that drive-by download initiates. So the different ways of gaining that initial foothold, a lot of research is done in the initial foothold. Because if I can gain that initial access, usually things are much easier from that standpoint. I just need to get into the system first. Then execution, what are we going to do once we're inside the system? Command and control, pillage, exploit, pivot to other machines, etc. There are lots of ideas here for that execution. And then persistence, how do we establish persistence? Stealth and persistence. How can we stay in that computer system for much longer? Different tactics that they grouped together here, categorized, and you can research further. Privilege escalation, defense evasion, evading the attack and signatures being detected. Credentialed access, perhaps there are credentialed access that was used or shared, etc. Let's see, discovery, how do we discover more? What are some of the scanning techniques that are used once you're inside the machine? Lateral movement, pivoting, moving to others, collection, exploitation, exfiltration of systems, collection there. Command and control, how do we establish command and control? Botnets, different types of ways to control the system. Exfiltration, how do we exfil information from that network? And then impact, what is the effect? Perhaps there is an effect/impact that the individuals wanted to do. Maybe they just wanted to paralyze every single machine out there, like your malicious insiders that we were talking about with the Korean people who went into Sony's warehouse. At least publicly available information says it was North Korea. But anyway, what type of impact do you want to do? Do you want to destroy, data destruction? Do you want to encrypt your ransomware that's never going away ever again? We will always have ransomware. Which types of attacks are we looking at inside of the MITRE ATT&CK framework? So what I'd like to do here, let's visit the MITRE ATT&CK framework real quick. But this is what the MITRE ATT&CK framework does look like. When you visit the site, their data populates, and even this is even more updated now because there are additional trees and additional mechanisms whenever you can click on these areas here to see more. So let's say if I'm interested in that initial foothold, or what's a good one? Let's go into command control. Let's try this one. Okay, so if we're doing, command and scripting interpreter, this type of execution, once I'm inside the machine itself, if I click on, let's say Python. So what I did, we just expanded the, I think, what was our initial access? Execution. I think execution and then Python. So execution, command and scripting interpreter, Python. Going into Python, it gives you information about how these attacks are used, what is just some general knowledge about the attack. And then I was talking about the APTs, so the advanced persistent threat actors who have been discovered previously. This goes into like which specific APT or which attack vectors out there have been seen doing this type of attack. And then if you click on them for that procedure, it will take you to additional aspects about that specific advanced persistent threat. There are many out there. More advanced persistent threat actors are going to be identified. Many times they are nation state actors. Insert your nation state here. APTs are many of them, like different groups trying to go after specific areas of attack and carry out different techniques. So here, as we're looking at this APT 29, this one attributes it to Russian government based on the MITRE attack framework. Associated groups descriptions, there are different descriptions out there that are associated with this APT. So for instance, whenever you talk about like the emotet or different viruses or malware concepts that are present, sometimes your AV vendors would give it a name, a specific name of this type of threat, vulnerabilities, malware out there. So these APTs, 29 has been associated distributing these types of malware. And then you can research further by clicking on the links. Now here, we have the techniques used. So which types of techniques are employed specifically by this APT, at least has been attributed to this APT. So here's one: bypass your user account credential, your user accounts credential, user authentication. I think it's user accounts credential. For Windows, the pop-up whenever I want to go into a privileged operation. And so now the account pops up with the username, you enter username and your password. It adds this information. So these attack vectors have used areas to bypass. Right, so there's a lot of information that's given here under the MITRE attack framework. Charming Kitten, I'm going to open that real quick. And different types of software that might have been used by the APT before. Right? They've even used Mimikatz. Mimikatz is really nice. And then additional references. And so here you'll see like there are many AV vendors who have been out there to say, hey, this is what we have discovered. This is the type of attack, likely attribution. And you just have to collude these things together to come up with your full resource information list. Like F-Secure, Symantec is out there, CISA, National Cyber Security Center. So reputable places to provide these references. And then this MITRE attack framework, amalgamates all of these sources together so you can research further. I mentioned Charming Kitten, like that one just came to mind because last year, let's say last year or the year before, there was specific attacks by this Charming Kitten that was really nice, in which they used domain generating algorithms and stuff to hide their actual attack. But if you're able to research further, you could have found the actual specific actors. Like we uncover the actors' names and their true email addresses here, because again, people are creatures of habit. And so knowing how to research, you can find these. But it's cool that these particular attacks, have been found, and these are the types of software/procedures that have been used. Really interesting. So as an exercise to the experts out there, please take some time to go through the MITRE attack framework. Be familiar with it, because many attacks that we perform usually is going to fall somewhere in the MITRE attack. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there, so let's proceed. I'm sorry, I clicked on the link again. Go next. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I put the whole picture as a hyperlink, so that's why if you're just looking at this, the PDF, you're like, don't want to copy this, you can just click on this picture and it will link you over to the framework. All right, so now let's get started with our virtual machines. I am also going to launch my virtual machines. They're all off. We will launch them so we can start them in real time and address any issues if some have occurred. Now, before we begin, I just want to check, Is there anyone still downloading the virtual machines? And if so, which VM are you still downloading? All right, I'm actually not seeing anyone saying that they're still downloading, so I take that as an assumption that we've downloaded the virtual machines. Awesome. Awesome. And if not, again, just send me a message. I'm private chatting to some of you as well to try and get things working appropriately. So just go ahead and message me, and we'll address it as best as we can. Right. So now, as we get to starting our virtual machine, so the credentials, these are the credentials to use. And what I do, write these down, because I will refer to my sheet to make sure I have the username and password appropriately. And then the way your virtual machines are configured, it's configured on this net mask of 255.255.0.0. Okay, so we've gone over this already. Here, this is the instruction that we're saying to start the virtual machines, to add them, and then to get them running. Oh, I see the IP address is different on slides 7 and 11. Oh, did I miss it? Nice. Okay, so this is slide. All right, let me go to. You mentioned slide 11. Hold on. Let me see. Slide 11. Slide 7. All right, I am. Which IP address? I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to ask. Okay. Oh, in the setup PowerPoint. I could have changed the IP address. What I would say is let's go with the IP addresses that are here, and if it has an issue or so, I'll let us know. I'll write it down. I'll write it down in my chat. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. If I had an issue there on the slides or so, I apologize. All right, let's get our virtual machine set up. So here we are. Yeah, 83 is correct. It should be 83. Let me put this in the chat. So your Kali machine. In fact, all this might be a little bit information. Just gonna put the details so we can see it again. I don't think that looks real good, but the information is there. And this IP address for your Kali machine, your Metasploitable machine, Metasploitable 3, not 254. Yeah, that should be correct. And then the 169.254.8.8 for DB. Okay, yeah, that should be the IP addresses that we use. So let's go ahead and get started on our virtual machines. And again, live demo is a thing, but hopefully that does not impact us. Okay, I'm seeing the clipboard sharing, the tips on sharing the clipboard. So sometimes that does happen with virtual machines. VirtualBox is a little more finicky to not always give access to the virtual machine. But one thing that is coming to mind are tools. Like there's a tools that you can try and install. I will try and set that up. Another thing is a share. So usually what I will do is I will share a drive, but I know there's no malware. Right? And there's no malware that I'm distributing in these virtual machines. And so I'll share a folder. I'll put a document in that folder, and then I might even name it clipboard. And then whatever I want to copy from the clipboard, I'll just put it in there. And then when I come out of the virtual machine to my host, I will open that same file and then copy the contents. Okay. All right, so here we have our 3 machines that we're using for this lab: DDWA, Damn Vulnerable Web Application. Metasploitable 3, excellent virtual machine to learn from, because it is ripe with vulnerable services. So it's good to test off of. you test and learn here, and then you can employ and adapt in the real world. That's really how it's meant to be, because again, your steps are the same. It just depends which specific exploit am I going to throw here versus. And then our Kali, this is our attacker box that we're using for this virtual machine. Okay, for this exercise. All right, so what I will do, as you have these loaded, I'll click here, this tools area, snapshots. I'll just click here, tools area, snapshots. This brings this up. So this is the snapshot I'd like you to run for the DVWA. So I'll right click this and say restore. And now as you restore, it says create a snapshot of the current machine state. And I tried to allude to that in the initial setup. Like, no, I don't need you to create another snapshot here. So I deselect that. And then we'll say restore. Now when that's done, hopefully the state of this virtual machine is restored properly to the previous snapshot that I expected it to be, because we made multiple snapshots, doing certain changes for this lab. So everything's fresh, it's warm, it's like it just came out of the bakery. That's this virtual machine. It's like a fresh, warm cookie. All right, now when that's ready, let's go ahead and press start. All right, and as that is starting, here, this is what we should get. Hopefully we have something similar to this, and this is just your base capture. This is your basic DVWA, and I set this to the snapshot that we already configured the IP address. It's set to host only, and then an internet is like an intranet network, so at least we can route to this ourselves, because we definitely don't want to accidentally fat finger the wrong octet of an IP address, the last digit of an IP address, and now we're hitting a hospital. That's not what we want to do in our first time of attack and exploit machines. That will be frowned upon. All right, so here, as we restart this, one of the things, if I am in the virtual machine, I can't move my mouse out. So if I do want to remove my mouse, jump out of the virtual machine, if I press Control, the right Control key, and then I should be out of the virtual machine. So from VirtualBox, I'm inside the virtual machine, type, do whatever I want. I want to get out. I press right Control. On VMware, that is, you press Control and Alt at the same time to jump out of the virtual machine. Right, but at least here we should have our, if I do, let's enter in the command ifconfig. If we enter ifconfig, ETH0 should have 169.254.8.83. I'll pause here. Is there anyone that does not have this? Okay. Oh, Hyper-V. I see. Interesting. Sorry, Harvard. Sorry for the issue there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and if when you get everything working again, it's pretty. I'm trying to see if I put in the instructions, but hey, I'll go ahead and write it right now, just in case the instructions did not go. So if you're looking at an ETH0 and you don't have this IP address, we can set it by typing in ifconfig. I'll just say sudo ifconfig ETH0, and then the IP address that we would like, which is 169.254.8.83. I just want to write that in. Okay, 169.254.8.83, then space netmask, and then the netmask is the one that we put on the slide, which is 255.255.0.0. So executing this, if I do ifconfig again, hopefully we should see that this IP address here is properly set, 169.254.8.83. Right. Okay, very good. Awesome. Right now, let's start the other virtual machine. So I'm going to bring this guy over here somewhere. We just need it running. That's all. All All right, let's go ahead and start our Metasploitable 3. So here, without loss of generality, we'll do the same thing. We'll click on our tools here, snapshots. I'm looking at our snapshots for Metasploitable 3. Okay, if I right click on complete, complete is the one I'd like us to restore. Restore, do not create a current snapshot. Restore. Now it should be restored here to my current state. And then I'll go ahead and press start. Okay, and when that starts, so I'm looking for my beam. I don't know if I press it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so when that's up and running, I should have my virtual machine. I should have my virtual machine that's configured in this way, right? So these are some of the users that we're looking at, and then Vagrant. So Vagrant, it should say Vagrant logged in, and we can actually log into this machine so you can see what it looks like. You know, again, we are teaching the initial scanning and exploitation, so it's okay to know the password. So we can verify, you know, if we shut down some things, if we need to restart some things. This is a good learning environment. All right. If I did want to log in, just real quick, Vagrant is the username, Vagrant is the password. So here I am. If I type in Vagrant, V-A-G-R-A-N-T, I log into this machine. This is the machine that you're looking at. Nice, good blue, pretty background. All right. So this is our Windows machine that we're going to go after for our scanning and exploitation. I will put him over here. Because we actually don't need to interact with it. We just need it to be on, and then we will interact mainly with our Kali machine. Just looking at chat. Okay, and then let's start with Kali. Kali, snapshots, final, restore. I hit restore. Oh, also some people, I think it was the Kali that said if it wants to, I think it's the Kali that said that it wants to load a saved, like a shared folder. So if that's the case, we can change some of those on any of these machines. If we go to settings, so here we're changing the shared folder settings if necessary. And this is also how you can share things in and out of the virtual machine. Usually, sometimes it just doesn't work with VirtualBox, and even with VMware as well. So if we go to settings, shared folders. So here, shared folders, this one is clear, there's nothing here. If we did want to share a folder, we can click the add, and then provide the path to the folder that we desire to share. We might come back and do this later. Right now, I don't think so. I don't think I'm looking to. Let me go into the Windows. If the Windows is giving you those shared messages, you know, the settings, shared, yeah, this is it. So settings, shared, this was the share that I was using before. So if you have this and it is giving you an issue, you can remove it. If you click the X, it should remove, and then the next time you restart the machine and such, you shouldn't have an issue. Okay. Oh, it's like I didn't start this machine. Okay, so after I restore the snapshot, I'm going to restore it just to be safe. Restore, and then start. And from this snapshot, it should restore and restart you to an already logged in virtual machine. That logged in virtual machine should have at the right side IP address that is configured for the system. And then I also set it up for NAT. As a network. Some of your networks might be different. You might want to have a bridged direct connection in which the interface appears to be a sole physical device on the network. You could also do that as well. It just depends on your home configuration. But now here with this machine, this should be our IP address that we're starting with, HTOP. Like things are running, we could use it. Sometimes I watch like the resource utilization of the machine. Other times I don't. So I'm going to stop it now. This guy looks to be heavily loaded. But that's fine. Okay, so at this spot, first off, let me pause here and ask, can you all see the screen okay? Can you see what I'm looking at with my Kali? Okay, perfect. Thanks. All right, now let me see if there are any other. Okay, very good. Yeah, Howard, thanks for the comment there on the load keys also. Very nice. Okay. All right, now let's ping both of the machines that we established before to verify connectivity that we can reach them. Because the worst thing is trying to attack a system, like, why isn't this working? I have no idea. Doing all the research to exploit a system, and you're like, oh, I did not even have connectivity to reach out to the system. So that's what we're going to check for. So to do that, let's ping our Metasploitable 3 machine. Metasploitable 3, let's ping 169.254.8.81. Right, and I'm reaching it fine, and those pings look correct to me at this point. Let's do the same thing for H3. I'm just using the up arrow to, again, repeat what I previously typed. Take out that 1 and replace that with a 3. So now I have ping 169.254.8.83. Okay, I am able to ping both of them at this time. So at least right now, it appears the systems are running properly. And I can do research as needed. One last, let's go ahead and ping google.com, to at least verify we have external connectivity from this virtual machine. So here I am. Let's do ping google.com. Let's see if I do have external, right? Okay, so that's good. So ping google.com, even from this virtual machine. I can also reach out to the internet as necessary. There might be things we want to download or update, or some of our searching might need external resources to enrich its information. Let me pause for a second. Is there anyone that had issues with our connectivity? Okay, all right, I am not seeing any issues, so that's good. Hey, great. I'm really excited with that. Good, all right. With those established, there's also something else that in the chat, in our slides, I said a way that you can change the color scheme. So I changed the color scheme from black to white, and it's just that when I put the screen captures in the slides, before when it's black does not do well with printing. So if you wanted to print the slides, the resources that we provide, that takes a lot of ink whenever it's the black background. So that's why I invert the colors and I do white. I won't do that now, but if we wanted to, we can go to, I will make one change. If we go to File Preferences, so we're going to File Preferences, and then here in the Appearance, this is where if we did want to invert the colors, right now we are in Kali Dark. We can change that to Kali Light if we want different colors or other color schemes, whichever you really like there. But the only thing I'm going to change is at the bottom, the application transparency. I'm going to change this to 0. And I'll hit OK. Right? So at least now I'm looking at black and I don't see the background. So this is only the text that we're looking and concerned about. And then whatever I highlight, it's just more distinct here. Okay. All right, so there we have gone through our setup. So now we're all set, and as I mentioned before, if there are any issues or so, please let me know and we'll go ahead and engage and we will fix them. So now let's understand the landscape of what we have. So we have us configured one machine, that's our DVWA, Damn Vulnerable Web Application, Damn Vulnerable Linux. With this, a good system of like different types of exercises that you could use to carry out attacking a vulnerable web application. It includes SQL injection, there's database attacks, there's file format exceptions, cross-site scripting examples that you can run through for your DVWA. So you have it, it's been around for a while, but it's good to practice. It's good to practice, know the basics, and then you can expand from there. We are also, we will be reaching out and touching some things on hackcon.org. This is another machine that we are reaching that's in our internet cloud out there somewhere. And then Metasploitable 3. So Metasploitable 3, created by Offensive Security. There is a Metasploitable 2 and a Metasploitable 3. There's also a Windows and a Unix. It's like a Ubuntu. I want to say it's a Ubuntu Metasploitable 3 machine. So by Offensive Security, they created these out there with fully known, previously exploited vulnerabilities. That's so you can have a framework to go about learning your tradecraft, explore different attack mechanisms, explore how you're going to use Metasploit, pivot to different types of attacks, etc. That's what these Metasploits are for. And now what we use these is to simulate going out and reaching any other machine out there on the internet. Because if you can exploit these, which is like this is the Christmas tree of attacks, all the attacks that, or a good portion of well-known, well-disclosed attacks in the past have been put together for you. So if you can exploit these, then whenever I do scan a true machine in the internet cloud, it may be a subset of the types of attacks that we're witnessing here. And then everything is simply a variation on the theme. If we know how to scan, select a vulnerability, load the vulnerability in our Metasploit penetration test, gain access to a machine, do our privileged escalation, any other machine that you want to do is simply a variation on the theme. You do it well here, it may likely work for another machine that's out there. Now, a final word, these machines are, as I said, they have known vulnerabilities, well-documented vulnerabilities. The real world is different. Mike Tyson, the boxer, he said, all your plans go out the window once you have the first punch. Once you're in the real world, things change. It's nothing like how you practice. Very similar, but things are different. Operating systems every day get better. Operating systems and programs every day are updated. They're upgraded. The vulnerability that works today is not going to work tomorrow, but new ones will be discovered. So as it gets harder and harder, we just do additional research to find a way inside the machine or adapt our approach to carry out another type of attack. But today we'll be starting with these three main systems. Oh, right. All right. So this is why you're saying the credentials is different. You are right. Sorry, that was a bad copy paste, and I can fix that. And at the end of the day, I will update our slide, and then the right one will be in the right spots. Yeah, sorry, that was a mistake on my part. All right. One thing here, there are a couple of utilities I would like us to clone. I'd like us to update our virtual machine. These were a couple of tools that I found were missing in this updated Kali, for whichever reason. So here we are on our Kali machine. No, I'll change it later. Okay, so here on our machine, let's go ahead and type in the couple of commands. Let's do sudo apt-get, or just apt. The old-fashioned, so I like apt-get install and then bind9 DNS utils -1. So here, this is bringing on the tools that we need for like dig and NS lookup. Those basic tools are removed from your initial installation. So that's why we're bringing it back onto the machine. So it's asking for a password. So it's Kali. Insert the password, installing and configuring the machine. And when we're done, let's actually create a snapshot of this so we don't have to do this every time. So this is the command we ran. Sudo apt-get, or sudo apt install bind9 DNS utils, and then -y, tac y, just so it doesn't ask me, are you sure you want to install? Yes, I want to install. I typed it to begin with. And so that's why we have it here, and then enter, so we install some DNS utilities. And the next one I'd like us to do, I'm trying to debate if I do want to install this tool or not. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and install it and see. apt-get install pip -y, just as I have on our instructions here. apt-get install pip. Uh-oh. Okay, so we don't need that. Did I type something in incorrectly? Oh, install. That's why. Sorry, I was with my hands a bit. All right, so this is easy install. And this is one of our other installation mechanisms, but I've actually included a separate instructions for GitHub, so it should be okay. All right, now let's go ahead and navigate to our desktop. That is CD desktop, tab complete. Navigate to the desktop. Let's put this in the dependencies. Let's go into dependencies again. So I just CD desktop and then dependencies, and here are some of the other tools that I included for you. Here, let's put this other scanning tool called Raccoon. It's no longer part of the apt-get update for this newer version of Kali that we're using. So let's download that now. So https://github.com, and then I'm sorry. At the beginning, it's git clone. Git clone. Okay, so git clone https github.com, and then EDYATARMEGED / and then raccoon with a big R, raccoon.git. Raccoon.git. Okay, so let's go ahead and clone those. All right, now once that is done, that should be good. Okay. Let's see. Okay, now let's go into that desktop that we downloaded, or into the directory that we downloaded, Raccoon, looking at the directory here. And then we'll install this, and then we should be good. Okay, sorry. Oh, sure. So let me paste the commands in the chat here. There we go. All right, I just put the commands in the chat. And then, okay, so sudo apt, where is sudo python 3, and then setup.py. Hopefully Python 3 setup.py. Let's hope this runs our setup appropriately. Let's set up. Did I miss something? Stall. Ah, okay, sorry. So that is setup, and then here, let me set up space install. So that was sudo python 3 setup.py and then install. Right, so that's the last one in Python install. Right, and again, as I mentioned, the update here is going to be posted at the end of this workshop. All right, so hopefully that finishes. That sets up our raccoon that we'll use for our scans tomorrow. And we should be good at this point. Okay, allow me to pause. Oh, that's right. So that's a good comment by Sindri. Uh, if you also need to change your keyboard layout, or in the chat, thank you, Benji. You also put in the commands to change your layout. Right. It's so sorry for the keyboard layout. It's always confusing for me when we have issues and we're doing this together, and I'm trying to figure out how to use keyboards different layouts. But yes, you can change the layouts with the chats down below. Okay, now, from this point, I'd like us to take another snapshot. I am going, well, I'm going to type in ifconfig again. So I just typed ifconfig. I'd like to show the, in fact, I'm going to go to the desktop, cd. So to go to the desktop, I just type cd space, your tilde, your squiggly mark, / desktop. Or you could just cd dot and backspace out of where you are. I just want to be on the desktop so I don't type anything, I don't save anything unintentionally into our dependencies folder. Now I'm going to type ifconfig again, just so it's running. I mean, not running, but so I see the details here, our IP addresses. And then let's take another snapshot at this point. Since we did a slight machine configuration, snapshots are free. Let's take another one so then the next time we restore, everything is already configured. All right, so to do that, let's go to machine, take snapshot. So we're taking a new snapshot of the machine. We go to machine, take snapshot. And then here, let's give it a name. I like to name it on the date and time that I take a snapshot. So let's do 2/20/21, 02/02. And let's go ahead and put in a time. So my time, it's 8 in the morning. Your time, I think it's 1400 right now. I can't remember how, we're in different parts of the world. But I will put in my time. Please put in your time, or however you'd like to name your snapshot. Let me say 0800, and then I'll say complete, or just updated. Well, let's say updated. Yeah, okay, I see, Benji, almost 15, almost 1500. Okay, then we say okay. Now, at this point, saving a snapshot, and the thing I do like about VirtualBox is, I mean, depends on the RAM utilization and such, but snapshots are so much faster on VirtualBox than when I do use VMware, but I use a lot of RAM, so it takes some time to let that thing tick. All right, we just configured our machines. Connectivity is good. We updated our machines. We took another snapshot. So in the future, when we restore a snapshot, we will use this one, this updated, because our system has now been updated with a few additional tools I'd like us to use. From this point, we are at the top of the hour. This is a good point, place just to take a quick break. Let's go ahead and take 10 minutes. 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10 after. 9-minute break. We'll come back at 10 after, and then we'll continue. And if you have any questions, please leave them down for me in the chat, and I'll respond and address. All right, I'll see y'all soon. All right, let's go ahead and continue. Welcome back. I hope your break was good and uneventful. So here we are. At this point, machines are configured. We're all well. I don't see any other questions in the bottom of the chat. If there are, please, as always, just go ahead and message me, and I will assist as best as I can. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our slide for a second. And of course, it goes all the way back to the 32. All right, so here, let's start with some initial reconnaissance. We're going to enrich our reconnaissance tomorrow. Yeah, we'll enrich some of that reconnaissance tomorrow, in which we'll talk about the Wayback Machine. And there are other ways to help with that. But right now, let's say that our motivation, why are we doing something? Research something. Let's say we want to exploit a domain. We will use hackon.org as that initial, just to do some NS lookup and some dig information about it, and who is information on hackon, and then we'll do the same thing for Google, and then we will focus on the virtual machines that we have, so we can look at how the systems are responding across the network, and we can begin our game plan to see how to determine that attack. So reconnaissance objectives: attempt to gain better awareness about that system, whatever system that we're going to review. What is exposure to everyone across the network? Initial tools that we will start out with, as we mentioned here, NSLOOKUP, dig, and whois. And then determine. So determine IP addresses. IP addresses, authoritative name, and mail servers. This is useful because whenever I look at a domain, there could be multiple machines that exist beyond just that single domain. Sometimes the other servers that exist for a domain, they're not always protected in the same measure or in the same manner. Like an admin could have made a mistake on domain name 4, on domain name system 4, when all 3 or 4 of the other ones are good, one might have a slight compromise. So if we can determine what are the other systems out there, we are now just adding information onto our checklist to see, okay, what systems am I going to go after? What can I find? What can I discover? Because you never know. One of those systems may give you that initial foothold, and then you can pivot from there. Other things we would like to discover here in our reconnaissance and definitely in our scanning: operating system. The operating system, what ports are running, what ports are open/available, running services, especially versions. I need to know the versions of the program that we're going after, and potential entity names. So names, this is where, as I mentioned before, if I am conscripted to go after a network or so, and the first thing I'll say is, all right, you want me to attack this network? Want me to gain access to this network? Very good. Who are the people? I'll look at the people first. So that's why, even as we look towards domains, we may want to look for what are some people's names, contact email addresses, because an individual's email address may be that initial entry mechanism onto the person's device, their phone, their computer. Once they log into their enterprise network, you may be able to pivot from that point. Now, the potential admin name, contact information from whois, in the past, it used to be much, much better than about May of 2018. Was it May 18? 2018? Anyway, May 2018. I want to say it was about May, around that time frame, when GDPR became a thing. So GDPR is good for protection and security of individuals, but it has also redacted a lot of previously very good and useful information that we could have extracted from the whois. So it's not as rich yet, but hopefully once we figure out how to normalize from GDPR, some information will be provided back again into the whois lookup registry information that we can find out about domains and whatnot. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. Let's start with NSLOOKUP. If we can execute this command, I got you, I will put it down in the chat below. Here we go. So if we can put that chat command from our Kali box, we are. All right, so I'm looking at Kali. Ali, NS lookup. So NS lookup was installed when we did our bind utils, DNS utils command. So NS lookup dash query equals N hackon.org 8.8.8.8. So the 8.8.8.8, this is one of Google's domain name servers that we're actually pinging off of. So there are different DNS servers out there, different routes, well, main routes, I mean replications of the route, but different servers that we want to ask. So Google is very good, ubiquitous, is always there, and so that's why we're reaching out. We're reaching out to Google's name server to provide us this information. And also using the query, we want to ask for what any records do you have that you can return information back over to us. So here, just what we're looking at, this is the server that we're using for our DNS across port 53. The name that we search for is hackon.org. That's good. Again, this is basic, but we have to verify that what I'm seeing is what I typed in, so that we know we're going after the right system. Because again, this happens, especially when you're tired, you're rushed. We just didn't do that slight verification. That is the difference between going after an approved system that you have and a school or something. Because IP addresses might be right next to each other, but in different parts of the world. So just verify what we're seeing. Now, this is an IP address that we do like, and if we were to get on the board, I would say, okay, this is one of the artifacts that we will write down about the system. So here, for hackon.org, I'm actually just going to write down the IP address of what I'm learning. Right here. So hackon.org is at IP address 91.189.123.141. 91.189.123.141. Good. Because some of our scans, sometimes it needs a domain address, other times it's an IP address. So that's why we need to know both. And this simple resolution helps us. You can also ping hackon.org if you wanted to determine the IP address. You can do a dig short, dig host to determine IP address. So many ways to get IP addresses. But at least this is one of them. Now the name servers. So these are the name servers responding to hackon.org. There are multiple ones out there. So that means, heaven forbid, if we were an angry actor and the goal was to potentially DOS a domain, you may be able to DOS one domain, because you might go, let me go ahead and try this IP address that may host many domains. But anyway, I could try and take one out, but if that name server is somewhere else, right, you take one, you need to take all of these into account to effectively carry out your DOS for whichever system that you're going after. And for sure, we're not attacking hackon.org. Please don't do that. That would be fine. It's a mail exchange server, the one that we may be able to use to bounce mail off of. Right? That information is here. Text information about its registration, its records, in essence. Right, then let's see, that's about it. So at least this is some information that we have, just one command to run. We can take the IP address and then some of the name servers out if needed. It all depends on the nature of the attack. Let's go ahead and look at dig. Now here, I'm going to type in the command, it is in the chat. So if we also like to save information, then we can use the caret to save information out. Because also doing this analysis, I like to be very verbose, as verbose as possible. So that means whatever I store and save, I see today, I want to store it out. Because what I see today may not be there tomorrow, right? So it could be an artifact that I can use at another time. So to do that, dig hackon.org, and then I'm going to name it with the command that I used for it, dig, and then the parameters, hackon.org. .txt. Or this might be a good case for me to create a share. I think if I use a share, it might look better. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Yes. All right, I'm going to create a share. So I can look at this in Notepad, Notepad++. It just looks slightly different. All right, so here I am. If I want to have a share, machine settings. I went to machine settings, shared folder, machine settings, shared folder, machine folders, share. Here I press the plus. Under folder path, we choose other. And now on my system, I'm trying to see where I want to share this to. Let's share it to Recon. I'm just going to say share to. So the second, I mean, what name it whatever you like. You can just call it share or so. Okay, auto mounts. Also make permanent until we restore the VM. Okay, and then okay. All right, and now if that was successful, if I go into file system, I should have that share that appears here, SF share 2. If I click on that, I'm going to right click and say open terminal here. So I just went to the area, right click, open terminal here, and now I'm at this location. You can also just directly navigate to wherever your share is. And then I'm going to use this as my share so I can save things out. So enter in the same command again. That was dig hackon.org, dig hackon.org.txt. Saving it to my share. Now on my Windows side, hopefully that will look better for me. Yes. All right. So let me bring that over. Here we are. I just like Notepad. It's whichever you're most comfortable with. This is what I'd like to use. Wait, so from the dig, so dig allows us to dig information about just the DNS and the DNS data from the domain that we're looking at. So again, dig hackon.org. Query status, no errors in the query. This is the A record, your address record. And for the DNS, there are many types of records out there, but the ones we really care for are your A record for the IPv4 address to domain, the MX record for your mail server, mail exchange server. There are pointers and aliases that different aliases can refer to a domain or give you another area to look for when you search. And then your quad A. So if it's quad A, 4 of them, then that's usually an IPv6 address to reach that name server. Right. So this one, just basic here, same IP address that we had before. These records will look different based on the domain that you're going after. Okay. All right, now let's take a look at whois. So if we do whois on Hackon, whois. Okay, so I just type whois hackon.org. I'm not going to save this one because it's not as verbose. And there's no issue. It's just each registration server, each registrar, domain registrar, they store information differently based on the top level domain. The top level domain is like .com is a top level domain. .org is a top level domain. So each of these top-level domains, would store however you have registration information differently, and then presents information differently. So this is good information from HackCon. Some of the stuff that we can see, the registrar URL, the creation date 2005 of when the domain was created, last updated last August. The current registration expires here. So this is also something some people do. They look at the daily registration, or they download the whole list of all domains that are present. You can get it from Aaron. I think Diana, IANA, might lead you references on different domain registrars. Then they can put in scripts that constantly look for which domains, okay, are expiring at a particular date, at a particular time. And then they can try and purchase those immediately. So they purchase it from a company. They can be fast enough such that now Coca-Cola.com is no longer owned by, Coca-Cola. It's owned by Joe Schmo over here. And now that person is like, well, I own the domain legally, so you can pay for it. It will only cost you a couple of million, but that is something that some individuals may do, and this is one of the ways that they can find out when a domain is available that they can go ahead and purchase, looking at the expiration date. IANA ID. Then, when I spoke about before in our reconnaissance, we may want to look for usernames. So username/email addresses. This is where some of that information will be found in like the registrar abuse email. This is for the registrar, not the registrant of the domain that we're looking at, hackon.org. Domain status, okay. Registered organization. So this is where Whois used to be just so rich in information, because I love to gather information. I do research on those things. But in other sites, like it still depends, but we could have seen like the registrant's name, the person's email address, their home address sometimes shows up here, phone number shows up here, and that's why it could have been good to gain more information about a particular individual, because usually these are at least an admin with some sort of level or credentials to the domain or the network that you're looking for. So this gives you a target to go after, or someone that you might try and emulate, like as Kevin Mitnick did in the past, to try and gain additional access to the system that you're out to exploit. Let's do another one. Let's do Whois on google.com. Oops, so that one. Whois. Right? So we just typed in whoisgoogle.com, and then what you will see is this provides much more information than they had before. Now, you'll also notice that this is in chunks. So here's one chunk. And then this is another chunk of information. So what you're seeing, and the reason that you're seeing this, I can't remember exactly when, but like .com updated its entire registry. I think that was also 2018. It was around 2017, 2018. Between 2006, let's say 2016 and 2018, that doesn't matter. But anyway, when they updated their registry, in fact, every Whois tool broke because they changed the way that they provided information out to people. Now, tools had to go back and modify the code to say, okay, here's how to account for that additional field that the Whois registrar for .com and other registries, they might have made changes also, that they have made. So this is, in essence, how you see the different changes, because this is where we go out to the, I think it's the top level. This is the top level, and then there are different requests that you do for Whois. This is now how you build a full list. This is your initial, and this is the full list. So this stuff should be duplicated down here. But the reason you see that is because of .com made a change a few years ago. All right, so now with more information here, Yeah, so this is for Google as we're looking for. Other things I would look at, creation date 1997, last updated 2019, domain status. I don't really pay too much attention on the domain status. But here, this is what I was talking about, that, man, before GDPR, this used to be so nice and wonderful. So in this, registrant organization is the organization that has registered, or the organization that appear to have registered a particular domain and whatever's out there. Now the states, registrant country, and then the email address. Now, Google.com, they use Mark Monitor, and Mark Monitor is one of your anonymizers out there to restrict, like, what is the actual contact information. I can pay a service. Some of these do it for free too, I think. But only that person's information is now used. So they're like a proxy to protect the actual true people behind, their real information. I mean, so it's done for protection. Some sites, many sites now, will use an anonymizer or a proxy to register and then to have that proxy's information online, such that if they're an attacker or a scanner that goes out there, they don't know who are the actual people that's being protected. All they see is the proxy. But sometimes you do get lucky and you see the actual person's email address who bought a domain, they went on GoDaddy.com or something, and now GoDaddy.com might release their email address. And so now you have a target. So the whole reason is reconnaissance. I'm looking at targets. Who do I go after? How might I gain access to a protected system? So there's registration, and then there's admin, and then tech information. So this is the registrant. Who are the admin of that domain enterprise network? That person's information is here. Who is the technical SMEs of that domain and such? That person's information can be here. And again, the reason this was created back was web of trust. We trusted every machine on the internet. So if you had a domain that a lot of people needed, and now your domain is gone for some reason, it crashed and needs to be restarted, how do I reach you to tell you, hey, we need to restart your machine? This is how we would have done it in the past too, is that was what it was for. But attackers can now use that to exploit machines at the same time. Okay. All right, name server. These are the name servers that are hosting the domain for Whois. So as we mentioned before, this gives us additional targets that we may want to go after. And then just other information about Whois and Mark Monitor as the registrant, the proxy guy. All right, so I know that's like, hey, I'm just looking at some basic things that we know, and that's true, but again, we're level setting, because as I attack somebody, I don't just, all right, let's whip out Metasploit. Let me try and throw an exploit at the system or the domain. You have to do a full research and reconnaissance to build your potential attack vector. So that's why we spend time doing that here. Now let's do a wget. So I don't want to say every domain, but most domains out there have a robots.txt file. In fact, let me show this real quick. Okay, so now let's get into wget's robots.txt. Wget, so robots, there are robots that are out there scanning the scanning the network all the time. I mean, this network that we know of and use, there are many internets out there, but this internet that we are all connected through, there are robots out there scanning, like which machines are there, which domains are there, can I gain more information about domains? Google constantly crawls systems just to learn and download the internet. Many of your search browsers are search engines, are going to go out there and download every single, or at least index every single website. So you have different robots that are crawling, and then as soon as they go to one page, they look for every single link referenced either to this page as an external referenced away from this page, or internal links that are referenced to itself, like other URLs. If I'm at hackon.com, hackon.org/video or something, I want to go and see some videos or whatnot. that's an internal link. So your crawlers are constantly searching every domain out there for different um, locations, different sites, different IP addresses, so it can build its index table. Such that now when you are looking for something and you type in specific keywords, you can see, well, this is a link or reference somewhere. Robots occur all the time. On my system here, I have provide some web services. I like seeing at many times when Google is hitting my system. Google hits it, other people hit it, Shodan hits it, people try and scan. It's interesting knowing, hey, what does the world look like? Like who's trying to hit? My system's out there. It occurs all the time. Now, one of the things, again, built on a system of trust is a file called robots.txt. Robots.txt is created to tell the robots that as they are scanning each domain, hey, you can scan my domain, it's going to occur, but I kindly ask you, please, do not scan these specific areas. Do not scan / do not index these areas from my current domain. If there is protected places that you don't want to be indexed, even though you need it to be accessible on the internet, you might say, okay, robots, as you all go through and scan my domain, you scan my website, do not include these in your search engine so others might not use it maliciously. So that's nice to say, hey, please don't scan my network. Now, attackers, we say, what do you not want me to scan? Because that's what I'm going to scan first. Because this could be something that's protected on your site. Like, all right, very good. I'm glad you tell everybody else not to look. That's where I'm going to look because I might find something that's useful. I might find a database of usernames out there. I might find an Excel, whatever it is. You don't know, but you have to try and put the pieces together. But that is why we care to download that robots.txt file. Very simple command to do. So let's go ahead and execute that here. Let me put the command in the chat. All right, command is in the chat. Bringing up now. There we are. Let me clear my screen. CLS clear. Clear. All right. So I type in wget hackon.org/robots is usually at the main base of the domain at robots.txt. So robots.txt. And then in the command, I'm going to say, and I want you to save this file. So space tac hyphen capital O, and then the location that I want to save it. So I am currently in my media share directory. So I'm going to say // from this current location, this current path, and we'll call it robots _ hackon.org.txt. Okay. Yeah, so on the slide, I just did hackon.txt. You can do either one. We're going to look at it. Okay, now pressing enter. So here we're using wget. Wget goes out, the tool. Wget is nice, very, very nice tool. So wget, you can use it to like analyze websites, download websites. There are so many commands out there for wget. And whenever you're not sure, Google wget download domain. So if you want to download an entire website and try to replicate it as best as you can, wget can accomplish that for you. Because true, I would download a full domain itself, whatever I can reach, and then I'll start to analyze each of the documents. Because maybe there is a hidden document or a file out there, /folder directory, that the admin might have left and forgot that is out there. You might be able to gain access to this, since you downloaded the website anyway using wget, and now you can find out additional information about the site. So there are different ways that you exploit. We just have to search and be the Sherlock Holmes to find out what we're interested in. All right, so what is unique about this wget? So there are a few ways to do this, but I want to show you something. All right. So in my folder here, right, I'm in my share to folder. Notice this is what we told it to say, robots.txt. In my robots.txt, if I do properties, yeah, what creation date do you see? You know, so here, this is telling you that this file that we just downloaded from hackon.org, it was last modified in 2015. So this is nice, and I say that because we can download the original file that has been modified, whatever that is, whatever that uh, looks like from the domain. Download the actual file. It's not a copy of the file; it is the file, and so that's nice because this gives us information about the activities of the domain the domain admins, etc. So that's I don't know. I just like seeing that. Wow, we get the actual file itself. Okay, now if we look into it, these are entries in this robots.txt saying, thank you very much, robots. You are not allowed to look into the firewall directory here on this website. You're not allowed to look into this CK editor or the CK finder. You know, that was what is written in this specific robots.txt. Just be kind, don't index and look at some specific folders. Again, as adversaries, as attackers, you have to learn and do some research to see how am I going to attack and exploit a machine. That could give you an entry mechanism that the admins want it to be hidden, but you can find it. Yeah, and then here you can even browse the robots.txt from your browser. So if I bring up my browser, yeah, I'm clicking MITRE dependencies. Okay, so here we are. Let's go to https hackon.org/robots.txt. Now we're looking at the entries of that TXT file. And you can do this to most domains that are out there. If it's a legit domain, everyone I've seen that I care about has a robust.txt file. So you can see, like, what do you not want the user to index? And then as a note, there are other ways to get this robots.txt file. We'll do a couple of scans that also drops the robot.txt file. You can write your own scripts to reach out to the robot.txt file. I'm just showing you a couple of ways. There's always more than one way to accomplish many of these objectives that we're doing. So let's do this with Google now. So now that you're familiar with at least a good small one from hackon.org, very nice to start with. Let's do the same thing for Google and see what we get. And command is in the chat. Okay, so here we are, wget, google.com/robots.txt, big O. I want to save it here as robots, into google.com.txt. I love seeing text scroll across the screen because it lets me know things are working and there is status. Now let's take a look at what we have with wgets. Okay. So date modified, if I do properties, the date modified that we're looking at, modification date January 11. So January 11, 2011 at 3:1500 p.m. wherever the time zone is on the dot. So when I see an on the dot, I'm like, it's automated. No worries, I don't care. They have a tool that's saving their folder and files of what not to index. Let's see the entries that way. Oh, there are a lot of entries here. In fact, like on the slide, I allude to the entries, like over 291 entries on Google that they're like, hey, allow, do not allow. You know, and that's what I mean. Instructing the robots file, you're allowed to index this, but you're not allowed to index this. You're not allowed to use these commands. You're not allowed to index this particular folder, whatever it is. Okay. So again, as I mentioned, what would I do? I will go for the robots file, and that's where I begin. Now a special note, and this is what I'm putting in this slide. As network defenders, Sun Tzu, old like BC Chinese war theologian, you know, is, gave a lot of specific quotes, you know, that's like, oh, it makes sense. Like Sun Tzu, war general, like Confucius has other types of quotes that you're like, oh, okay, very nice. One of the things Sun Tzu said, and we've heard this many times, is know thyself and know thy enemy. So know your capabilities and know your enemy's capabilities, and it depends what hat and what color hat you're wearing. Let's say I am defending my network. So the enemy is the attacker trying to exploit my computer machines. When I know myself, I need to know what capabilities do I have or what systems are out there, and then know the capabilities of the adversary so now I can defeat them. So when I bring up that quote, know thyself, know thy enemy, since Google knows that this is what we kindly say, do not index, you know, for different robots that are going out there when you go to google.com, do not index google.com/groups. Attackers might say, okay, thank you, that's exactly what I'm going to index first, because you're telling me that this might be something private or protected. There's also a way to do honey tokens. Honey tokens, honey pots, this is a mechanism that I might have a specific folder out there that is only accessible or only known, you know, with a keyword pattern from my robots.txt. Something long and random, or just, you know, there is absolutely no link to it. The only way that you can determine this location is if you read the robots.txt file. Now, if I see someone who reads that robots.txt, I don't care who reads it, but if they try and access that specific directory area that I said, hey, I don't want you to access, then immediately this can tell me that, hey, this is nefarious, because no legitimate user should be reaching out to this specific folder that I created specifically saying robots do not index. And now at that point, you have some options. Am I going to block the IP address, prevent people from accessing my site, because this could be someone malicious? So that's just what I mean by know thyself, know thy enemy. You don't just always index every single one of these. It depends on the nature of the attack. Okay. And then finally, you know, just this in particular, I'm curious, if I go to my browser and we did HTTPS, Google, Google.com. Okay, and then one of the folders here is saying disallow groups. I wonder what happens if I put groups in. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this exists or this doesn't exist. Oh. Okay, well, maybe this is something else that says, hey, log in and see whatever else is out there. You know, this ingress, I don't know what that ingress is. Images? If I do google.com, IMGRES, you know, to the folder, they're like Google image results. You know, sometimes you don't know. And as I'm saying, I'm doing this off the fly. I'm just like, whatever directory is out there, you know, look at these. And we may want to search if you want, you know, keep your honey tokens in consideration, and then determine what you want to attack. Perhaps there's another domain, there's another area that we want to research further. So that's why this is. That's how we can use something that was meant to be secure in a malicious manner. All right, so that covers our wget. Okay, scanning. All right, let me pause here. Are there any questions so far? I mean, this is pretty, it's important, but we're still just setting the stage. Okay. Okay, So with our reconnaissance, and there's a lot more reconnaissance that can be done. I'm sorry, just doing a quick touch and go because we at least want to build some information and then continue on into the scanning. We'll start with basic scanning and then we'll get into more advanced scanning today and tomorrow. Okay. Now, if we had a week, and actually not even a 1 week, because there's so much more that we can do even in a week, I wouldn't even do this. But if we had like 2 weeks, or we had a semester that we're learning how to attack and exploit computer machines, we would actually investigate other scanners out there. Because Nmap is one scanner. It is the most well-known and most widely used, but there are other scanners. There's like SuperScan, Netcat, the tool and remote administration tool there. Netcat has a scanner. There are other tiny scanners. So we have spent some time looking at all these other scanners and then doing a comparison to see, well, what features exist here, what features exist there, and then does Nmap cover everything? What is Nmap missing? Or we will now focus on how do you create a scanner and bring in the specific features that we want. However, ain't nobody got time for that in just these couple of days that we have together. So we will focus on the de facto tool that everyone, if you talk about attacking and exploiting machines, everyone is familiar with Nmap. At least you've heard it before. Network mapper, and then we will launch some flags off of it from here. Right? So Nmap, what is network mappers? Free open source tool, license utility, network discovery, and security auditing. It was built for auditing, discovering different systems on your network, but oftentimes that defensive tool can be utilized by the attackers and vice versa. Remember I said many of the techniques utilized by the defender and the attacker are indistinguishable. And so this is one of those tools that we can use to both defend, know what's out there, and also attack and learn information about vulnerable systems. So many systems network administrators also find it useful for tasks such as network inventory, managing service upgrade schedules, monitoring host services uptime, etc. Coming up with service names, NetBIOS names. There are lots of things to use with Nmap. Nmap is wonderful. Every time I work with Nmap for a while, there's always new flags that I'll come up with or a new line that I was like, okay, this kind of works well in this situation. It all just depends. Nmap is free, open source. It is updated, and then just continue to learn and see what works best under your specific use case. Uses raw packets to identify, determine active hosts, enumerate running services, fingerprinting, so knowing the operating system and versions, determine packet filters, firewalls. So firewalls are used based on the response. Also available in a command line. So command line GUI, Zenmap, Zenmap looks to be deprecated. I wanted you all to have Zenmap, but the installation is not common basic on the updated Kali Linux, or at least from this shell that we're using, because we're now using Z shell here instead of just bash from before. So if you do like user interfaces, you can view the Google tutorials on installing Zenmap, just a GUI for Nmap, or you can just use an older version of Kali. So Kali 2019, Zenmap is already configured for you if you want to use the GUI. The GUI is nice. It has some drawings and things like that. Everything we need is still from the default Nmap. And then at the bottom here, this is the link. So if you do want to learn more about Nmap, it's right. So as we do our scanning, we've mentioned the goals: live systems, services, ports, potential attack entry vectors right here. And then here are some just basic commands that we can run. So what I'll do, let's go ahead and do a basic scan real quick, and then we will advance the scan from here. Okay, I'm gonna have to type it. Nmap 169.254.8.83-T5. So the T5 is the speed. You can go from T1 to T5. T5 is insane, saying scan as fast as possible. There are benefits and drawbacks to that. The benefit is I get my scans quickly. The drawback is since it goes really quickly, you can also lose packets. And so losing packets, you might not get full information since you're just going too quick. I put the command in the chat. Something else I'm using is a flag here, and we'll talk about flags in a couple of slides. So this flag dash OA, this is the output all feature. So your output all feature says Nmap can output information about the scans in three formats. There's a grippable format, there's a raw text format, that's like it's the Nmap format, and then an XML. So the XML is good because you can take that XML, load it into a web browser or an XML viewer to see information parsed specifically from the scan. Additionally, and we'll get into this tomorrow or Thursday at the latest, there's a separate tool called Searchploit. So we can use Searchploits to look for different exploits specifically based off of the Nmap scan. So it saves you a lot of time as you're looking for, well, how might I attack a system? But after doing my initial scan from Nmap, I can simply pivot to Searchploit and say, hey, load this XML file. Searchploit looks through the XML and sees, okay, these are the applicable vulnerabilities based on our current Metasploit database. And then you can even start immediately pivoting into, okay, let's start to throw some exploits at this machine and see if we can gain access to it quickly. Okay. Now, that was a lot of talking. So you all have already executed the command. I will execute. Nmap 169.254.8.8.3-25-OA, and I am in the save directory, right? And then Nmap, and I'm just naming it, Nmap basic, and we're doing this on DVWA. So now when it's finished, this is just a basic scan. The basic scan tells us the minimum, which ports are open, and then the likely service listening on that port. That's it. There's no versioning, there's no additional information. This is just my basic scan. So at least with this, I can determine that the system is live. There is a live system out there that we're trying to scan. We reached it, and it has these ports. So 21, port 20, 21, FTP is likely running. 22, SSH is likely running. Port 80, of course, 80, 80, and then 8080 as HTTP, likely web servers running on that remote machine. 443, it's running unencrypted. Unencrypted web service that it doesn't require an SSL certificate. And then this is like TLS, it's secure HTTP over SSL. So there's a encrypted HTTP as well. And then 3306, MySQL. So MySQL, there might be a database that is running on that distant end system. Let's advance. Oh, well, let me show you real quick. In the save folder, these are the Nmap scans. So at least from the basic scan, the GNmap, the Nmap, which is whatever you're seeing here, and then the XML. So if I load that, if I drag and drop the Nmap, that's just the base results, that we just scanned and that we could see. The XML parsed details about the scan. If you like things in XML, you could do a Google XML browser. And forgive me, I hope nothing else is going to, on this Googling, I hope nothing else comes up crazy here. Let's download something. Online XML. Online XML viewer. Was that one? Yeah. This is it. So here, if I take my XML text, copy it, paste, and I'm just using this codebeautify.org XML viewer, and browse preview, you have to hit enter. No, it's not the URL. Okay, well let me see if I browse it then. Let me do this. Share. This is the XML. Oh, well, live, wait, tree view. Oh, that, I'm so sorry. If you click tree view, it will show you the XML that it has parsed. So this is kind of a nicer way to browse the different XML entries. My mistake, I think that was true. So here, this is the details that we have, IP address that we're looking for, IPv4, whatever Nmap shows. So it's just a way that you can view it. But we just care to load that XML into Searchploit tomorrow or the day after. All right, that's our basic scan. Let's talk about some forms. So just so we know, Nmap has thousands and thousands of flags out there. That's well, not thousands, but it has many flags, and now you can use many different permutations to see like what do you plan to do on your type of scan. How do you try and defeat a firewall or get through a firewall? So hopefully I can at least touch the distant end system or the distant end remote server to determine more information about it. So a few flags that I care for that we will use throughout our scanning. One, verbose. If we want to be verbose, just see more information as Nmap is scanning the system, the -d flag is useful. -d, debugging. So I do want to foot stomp debugging because there are times that we will use the more advanced type of Nmap scripting. That more advanced Nmap scripting is when we utilize the Nmap scripting engine, NSE, Nmap scripting engine. Now, sometimes based on the parameter, we will search online, see how do I enter in a parameter? Okay, I put it in, I try and scan, error. It crashes, something doesn't happen, something doesn't go right. I'm like, well, what happened? Enable the debug flag, and sometimes you will see where that crash occurred and to determine, oh, well, I didn't enter in the parameter right, or there are sub-arguments that also need to be specified. Port number, if I want to change the ports or specifically scan a system for specific ports. So whenever we do a scan, Nmap does utilize your most common ports as well as your non-ephemeral ports. So your port 1 through 1024 of which specific services should be listening on the port. Nmap will do those scans, but sometimes the scans take a long time. I just want to scan port 80 and port 443. I only want to look for a web server that's listening out there. So that's when you can specify, hey, only do a scan on this particular port. SV, if I want to determine versioning, I want to have Nmap. All right, good. You found an open port. Query that service further to see what Apache version is it? What SSH version is it? Is it running OpenSSL? What are the specific versions that are listening on a service? Now, the reason that is so crucial, you have to know versions, is because when we talk about exploits are specific. Exploits are specific to the version, they're specific to the service version, they're specific to the operating system. Without knowing the version, it's like you're shooting. You have a specific gun, and you want to hit somebody 100 feet away, and in a wide open field, and it's black, it's dark at night, and I aim my gun and I shoot. Without knowing the version information, you're not likely to hit your target. You're not likely to gain access to the system. But when we do know the version, the specific service name, version, operating system, etc., now it can be specific to load a particular exploit at a system, to throw it at the box. And also myself, as I'm writing an exploit, I have to know the version. So if I download that specific version, I'm now doing my reverse engineering, I write my exploit specific to that system. And then it runs, and hopefully it works. Usually it takes a while to write an exploit, but when we get those exploits to work, upon the next version, like that buffer that I might be overflowing, or the system that whatever I've used to compromise that program, it might have changed. I might have restricted the number of characters that are coming in. So that's why versions are so important, to be specific on this. And SV helps you gain that additional version information. Okay, PN. So I'll also at times use PN. So what PN does is it instructs Nmap to not ping. So Nmap, when it wants to scan an entire network, there could be a lot of systems on an entire network. So I was like, I'm not going to waste time scanning a system that was never live to begin with. So I will ping first Nmap. Nmap pings, it says, oh, okay, this system is live because it did an appropriate response to that ping. I will add it to my my list of systems to scan, and then it will conduct additional scans from that point. But there are times when a system is on and it is not responding to ping. If it's not responding to ping, firewall said don't respond to ping. Nmap would have treated that system as it's off and it would not perform its scans. So this directive or this flag tells it, hey, assume the system is on, assume the system is active, and complete your scan. OS detection, so one of my favorite flags, I'll always use -A. So -A combines an OS detection flag. It combines the version flag right here. So operating system detection, version detection, and then it adds a few additional scripts from the Nmap scripting engine. It adds some of those and traceroute to provide you a wealth of information just by using one command, Nmap-A, instead of having to use different flags. Right? Script, hyphen script, amazing. I love this script flag. This script flag, based on the website, Nmap's website, and we'll go through that. Its website has different scripts that you can put together as well as categories for doing a lot of scans out there. So this is how you would give a directive to Nmap to say, load this particular script or these categories of scripts. We'll get more onto this later. T1 through T5, scan types of speed. So T1, as I mentioned before, that's your slowest speed. And then T5 is your intense, fierce scan. You want to be quick, use T5, but you could lose some information. Now, if you want to be more slow and more stealthy, then we'll use T1, T2, along with some other flags to try and obfuscate our actual attacker source IP addressing. Okay. I'll show a few. Then these are the types of scans. So Nmap will try and, by default, do a full connection scan. That's your SYN, ACSYN from the distant end, and then acknowledged again, a full connection to see additional information exchange for your three-way, your four-way handshake, but we can be efficient and do it in 3 ways. And so if I only want to do a SYN scan, SYN, I look for an ACSYN packet and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I move somewhere else, to be more faster in my scan. Then I can say, hey, only do a connection scan. SYN, ACK, TCP SYN, only send a SYN scan, only send an acknowledgement scan. Sometimes it's good to confuse the operating system. Like, I'm going to send you an ACK, just an gratuitous ACK. Now, the system, when it receives an ACK, is like, wait, did we have a connection? Did I miss a connection? Reset. The computer's like, hey, I'm sorry, I might have missed a packet. Let's reset so we can restart or close down the connection. Now, just receiving a reset means, hey, at least the system is live out there. There are just different ways that you want to determine who's live and then who would I go after. UDP scan, do I only want to scan on UDP? All right, null scan, I don't have any flags set, no. FIN scan, I'm going to send a FIN. Again, try and confuse the distant end system. FIN, I did not set up a previous connection. Reset, you're like, there's someone live here. And then I can come back again and scan it later. Or Christmas tree scan. Christmas, because there are different flags. It's like many flags are on. It's like, oh, it's Christmas, like an ornament on a Christmas tree. There are many things there. That's why it's called a Christmas scan. Hit ping, if I want to do a ping sweep. OA, if I want to have my output just as an XML, for instance. If I want just XML output, I can use the OA. I'm sorry, OX as XML. OA, this is what we used previously. This is my all output. So the output is normal, XML, and then a greppable format. Okay. We are about to do another scan, but let's take a quick break. Let's go ahead and take 5-minute break. Just stretch the legs real quick, and then we'll get into some scans, and then we will. I think we're at the last hour for this workshop, and that's just fine. We have plenty of slides. We will pick up from where we leave off today and continue tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and take 5. We'll come back at my time will be 09:15. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Just want to make sure everything's okay. Um, are you hearing me good? And screen, am I still sharing the screen? All right, perfect. Thank you very much for the feedback. Okay, let's do a let's increase in our scans. Let's do a separate scan here. Let me advance. Here we go. Let's do this scan. So nmap-pn. Oh, let me copy it for you. Nmap-pn, and on this side we're saying do not start with a ping. Just assume the system is live and go out and scan. Dash A give us operating system versioning and do some script scanning. T4 timing, be a little fast. IP address, and then dash OA, so that's different outputs for us, and we're going to do this on our DVWA. Okay, so here I am, nmap dash pn dash a dash t4 169.254.8.83 dash o a nmap, and then hyphen a, because I'm just saying I'm using the nmap with the dash a command, and it's for DVWA, and it's on DVWA. So now that it's scanning, one of the things you can do is while it is scanning, you can press enter, or yeah, you can interact slightly with nmap, because sometimes we're going to get to some scans that take a while to complete. So you can press enter, enter to see a status, and then it will tell you, you know, this one was at 60%, but it's a relatively fast scan. Okay, now with this complete, I want to, oh, we can look at it. We can look at it here. So whenever we do a scan, we want to investigate, what did we get? What are we seeing? What does it mean? What does it mean to us? So before we start with nmap again, we want to verify, did I scan the right system? Yes, we did. All right. So under ports, 21, FTP, and then we added in the dash A, which also includes service, it includes versioning. So with versioning, I can see that this is Pro FTP version 1.3.2C. Okay, I mentioned, please, versioning is crucial. We have to know the specific version. And now when nmap gives this to us, it is like, oh my goodness. Okay, thank you very much. I start Googling what exploits are available for Pro FTPD 1.3.2C. I Google, I go to exploits DB, exploit database, and I check what exploits might exist for OpenSSH 5.3P1. Right? So this is the specific, what exploits exist for Apache version 2.2.14. So if I can determine these, that, oh yeah, hey, there's an exploit that exists out there, especially on a good website like ExploitsDB, then I might even be able to download the exploit. If I can download the exploit, and if it's not already in my Metasploit attack framework, I might try and say, hey, load into Metasploit. You know, there are well instructions, Google, how to load ExploitDB code directly into the Metasploit framework. You update your framework, now you have a new exploit, try and throw it against that system again, see if you can get access, because you have determined the specific version that could be vulnerable. Other times you might have the code that is out there, and you can just use Python or whatever is your programming language, modify, tweak a little bit, and then execute that specific, run your program to try and throw that specific exploit once again. All of that is possible because we know the specific version. You have to know the version in order to carry out these specific attacks. But it is really good when you do find these and it works out. Okay. Then, so part of the scripting engine that you saw with the dash A, nmap will do additional probes for you. So here it's all that this is port 80, Apache server, web server, that is responding. This is the version, and then it tries to probe even further. It says, okay, what directories might it be able to find? And here's telling you that this is a specific script, and we'll talk about these scripts tomorrow. But this is a specific script that is running. It is the HTTP cookie flag. It's trying to reach out for the HTTP cookie and see what it gets back. This is the results back, PHP, SESS ID. Okay, and then the HTTP only flag is not set. So it also tells you that this could be an issue, this could not be an issue. It's reporting vulnerabilities based on what it can determine. And then the robots. Remember when we had robots? So the robots in Nmap is saying robots has one disallowed entry. At times, based on what Nmap can do, it would be able to read the file and produce the entries here below. It all depends. Okay, this one, HTTP server header, this is a separate script that is present in the Nmap scripting engine. So the HTTP server header telling us that Apache 2.2.1.4. Again, we look through every line at least to see what is important because we don't know. This is how you do your hacking, not the pretty screens, insert cyber noises here. This isn't. To determine what is useful, and then I launch specific exploits based off of what we can procure. HTTP title, a separate script. From the HTTP title, it's telling us damn vulnerable web application, and then this is the login for that vulnerable web application. And then that resource was login.php. Port 443 is open. It could be SSL, HTTPS, and Nmap is not exactly sure. But for the certificate that it did find, this is the header information on that certificate. It's not valid before 2004. It's not valid after 2010. So, this system has been around for a while, and others you'll see it's updated. It's not valid after next year. Okay. And then Cypher is accepted in that SSL. Then this is the header from the MySQL, port 3306, open MySQL, and it did not necessarily know its version number, and we can try and probe further. Other time you just try and connect out to it and see what you get. Okay. Then here, this is another big one that we are looking for. Bigly. We want to determine what operating system am I going after? What operating system? You have to know the operating system because operating systems handle memory differently. They do different protection mechanisms. It's everything. You have to know the operating system. This also lets us know how we have our exploits to configure based on how the memory and the stack grows. That's one of the easiest things to understand with the operating system. So here, this is telling us that the operating system, it is a Unix operating system, Unix kernel. That's what it was able to determine. Other systems will tell you specifically, like Windows, it's Windows XP Service Pack 1. Lovely operating system. I loved Windows XP Service Pack 1. We shall give a moment of silence for Windows XP Service Pack 1 because so many exploits ran beautifully, time and time again on Windows XP Service Pack 1 through Service Pack 3. Anyway, different operating system information that you can find. So that's what this is telling. So as we do our research on the system that we're exploiting, this builds, like we're writing down some notes. IP address, what services are out there? I'm going to start to Google these, find attack entry mechanisms. I have to know my operating system, specific kernel versions, etc. Now I can be better ready to start throwing exploits against the system. Okay, I will pause here for a second. Are there any questions, at least with what we've done so far, what we're looking at? Why we look at something? I mean, did I miss something that's interesting to you that you're like, well, I've used Nmap here, right? Okay, very good, very good. Thanks for the comments. Okay, so a few things that I'm showing on the slide. So that's what I mean by highlighting and showing some arrows. So here we're looking at the versions, specific versions on the ports, different versions on the Apache server, the operating system that we're able to find at this side. Other times it will be more specific. It just depends what Nmap has loaded in its database. And also there are instances when Nmap is not able to determine what the operating system is. In those cases, it will say something akin to operating system not sure. You might get a question mark on something it thought it was, but then it will give you identifying information that you can take that, you can Google, you can add it to, like there are many Nmap um, people out there that are like, I want to analyze every single catalog. I want to catalog every single virtual operating system out there, and with specific flags and indicators, you can match that with what other people have found to say, oh, here's a new operating system. Like it's an Apple iPhone version 7 or 15, or I don't know, it's Apple, so tomorrow it's gonna be like 38. The next day it'll be like 52 or something, and there'll still be long lines to buy Apple products. But anyway, you can try and research to figure out what operating system, because as new things are discovered, the database might not be updated yet, but others may have found what you're looking for. So you Google and research, and then we can determine, aha, here's a specific device I'm going after. This device is susceptible to this particular type of attack. And then you can try and throw that attack if able. Okay. And then the fun fact here that I was talking about, when I mentioned it yesterday, the XML file, the reason we do the -OA XML file, we can throw that directly into SearchPloit, which is a tool that you have loaded on your Kali machine. And then it can automatically tell you some of the exploits loaded for the system. So it saves you some time. Okay, now hacking the art and the science. As we go about hacking machines, it is both an art and a science. The art is your specific way, your mechanism, the way you do things, like your tradecraft. This is specifically, I'm going to use these flags over these flags, or I'll use these flags once, and then I'll come back and use another flag at another time. That's your art, your feel of doing your hacking. And then the science, the science is the tools. What tool are we going to use? Which tools are repeatable every time? The science about hacking, I'm going to use MNet, basic, especially in this setting, I'll use Metasploit as my tools. But how do I employ them to carry out the attack? How do I update them to accomplish the impacts and the effects that I need? That's where our art comes from. Here, hopefully at the end of this workshop, we can develop that penetration tester's voice, the hacker's voice that at least says, here's how I would look at a system. Here's how I might begin to scan, and let me start and throw an exploit at it and see what happens. So there's a lot of investigation work that goes on. I mentioned it's not glamorous in TV, but we look at it, we analyze each entry to see, okay, what is interesting, what is useful, and then we go from there. Okay, so now as an exercise to you, just a very, very quick one. Do the same scan that we had. What results do you come up with when we scan our Metasploitable 3 machine? Like, what does that give to you? What information is useful? And be careful, there's a lot of information that is returned. But go ahead and launch the scan against our Metasploitable 3 machine, and let's come back in a couple of minutes to see what you have uncovered. And also, just as a quick note, I included the instruction on slide 55. And so you can just copy slide 55 and then complete the scan and then review the results and see what is interesting to you. And as I mentioned, as it's doing the scans based on the speed, etc., you can press enter to see what the results are looking like. Or at least its status. Is it 79% done, 80% done? So, yeah, that's right, Harvard. And looking at what you mentioned, yeah, my scan, I think for this one took like 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah, so it's like 6 to 10 minutes for the scan because it's doing a lot. And we also directed it to determine OS and versioning. So for every port, it's going to try and determine the version. So it takes some time. All right, so this is the command that I ran, you know, as we have in the slides. Is everyone okay? Does anyone need more time for their scans to complete? Okay, yeah, it looks like we're good at this point. And just in case, if your scan is still running, it's okay. As I mentioned, it takes time. In the share, you have a copy of all of the scans. So all of the scans and results from the scan, you have it so we can still follow along. And you can see here, as it was running, I was checking the status like, hey, come on, what's taking you so long? How far along are you? So, I'll just press enter a few times to see how it's coming. Then I look here, my scan and scan report for this particular IP address. That is the IP address we meant to see. Now we start to understand more about each of the ports and services and versions that are running. So just so you know, I mean, if you're ever attacking a machine, you see this much information, like this is mouth watering, like, oh, it's gonna be a good day today. Like that's kind of what this type of results look like. It's not always this robust, right? But at least you see something that's really small, some things that are large, and then real life is something in between. So FTP, I'm seeing here, Microsoft FTPD already. I'm like, okay, FTP, what exploits do I have for FTPD? That's really what's in the back of our mind. Which exploits run, which exploits work appropriately for each of these versions that I'm discovering and the operating system. Okay, so there's OpenSSH running, OpenSSH version 7.3, Microsoft IIS 7.5, and then even from the scripts, so that Nmap is running specific scripts. When we gave it the capital A version detection also runs some scripts. The HTTP method script is running here that says, hey, from what I determined in this IIS Microsoft server, there could be a potential trace method that is authorized, that is applicable. So it's just one mechanism that we say, this might be something worth going after. And on this specific web port 80, it tries to bring up the title. It said, I could not find the title here. If there are cases where a title is found, it will give you, this is the title of that website. RPC DCOM, port 135, very, very nice, back in our Windows XP days, long live Windows XP. 139, NetBIOS ports, again, 137, 136, 137, 138, 139. NetBIOS, usually if I don't even know the operating system, like let's say the operating system is here, but I do have 136 through 139 open or responding on that system, likely going to be Windows, because that's NetBIOS ports. 3306, so MySQL, and then we have the version of MySQL, MySQL 5.5.20. Again, we check what vulnerability might exist for these. Now, this is also nice. As this script was going out, it has a MySQL info script. That MySQL info script was able to derive the following information from this service. Protocol, MySQL running protocol 10, version 5.5.20. And then capabilities, it supports all of these actions, on a server. That's pretty cool. Okay, auto commit, salt. 3389, I'm looking at RDP, remote desktop for Microsoft remote desktop. Right. Encryption, so it might have remote desktop enabled just based off of that port. 4848, an app service or of some sort. Now, it's encrypted because I see an SSL certificate, website most likely, and Oracle, belonging to Oracle. So interesting, which apps might be running them. And even as I'm seeing some of these, like when we do this, we're curious. We could use our browser and say, okay, what is on port 4848? Let's do that and see. I'm curious myself. So here we are. Our browser, this is on our Metasploitable 3 machine, so 169.254.8.81, and then port 4848. It looks like I could not reach that. All right, let me try port 80 just to be sure. Oh, wait a minute. Wrong machine, sorry. Here we have Firefox. So let's do it from here. Firefox based on the next. HTTP 169.254.8.81. 8.81.44. This is right. This is better. So now that I am reaching a site, website is presenting a certificate back to us. And you have something like this, you're like, well, I still want to see it because I'm curious. So if we go to advanced, and then accept search risk and continue. So here on the security warning, we click on advanced and then accept the risk and continue. Okay. Now I'm responding and I'm viewing the, just the port that we discovered from our Nmap scan, running on port 4848, but I'm reaching out to it and I see that, oh, okay, there's a Glassfish server that I could log into. So now back in our notes as we're researching and saying, okay, what's out there? I would take a note perhaps of, let's investigate this further, because if I want to, we may even try a password root login and see, is there a way, can I gain access to this system? Can I take it out? Can I exploit it? I do have a name so far of Glassfish out there. So I'll see Glassfish, copyright 2015, 2013, I'm sorry, 2005 to 2013. So already, even from every indicator here, I will try and determine, do I have version number? Here's an application 4848. What else can we discover about this? Because this could lead more information about a susceptible program I want to exploit. Something else really, because we just don't know, so we have to explore and investigate. We'll also try view source. Oops. I'm looking at, no, that's not right. No. This is on the fly. Stop. I guess I can't see page source as easily. I might be missing something here. I'll look at that over. No, there it is. View page source. Goodness gracious me. So I just right click, view page source. Now, as I look at the page source, there are times when, passwords are still stored here and it's just commented out. So you might look, okay, is there a password? Is there an old item that I might use that can gain me access to the system? Or perhaps there are some default information, so that's a login page, that I can now determine what version this program is, because I don't have it immediately here. But again, if we can determine the version, now we can be more specific in searching for an exploit that exists on the specific system. So that's just part of our investigation that we're looking for. Okay. All right, so that's port 4848. None of these immediately come to mind. 7676, probably another one very similar. Right? Java message, and probably a web server there. 8,000. I see 8,000 Abyss, 2.9.3.5, like or 2.9.3.3 Abyss. So that's a HTTP daemon. Another web server. Maybe we just found another web server. Let's take a look at that. Let's see what it looks like. We're not sure. This is part of the investigation of hacking. Like, this is how we know how to gain access to a system, via the direct method. There are so many other methods. There's another workshop that we can do that. We actually write exploits. We write things to come. That's a separate mindset. Here we're just trying to do directly. So this is saying login on port 8,000. You're just waiting for that server to respond or so, or connection failed. Okay, let's continue looking through. 8009, Apache, another web service. Oh, I'm okay. Thanks for the comment. HTTP. My mistake. Wait. Oh goodness. Oh, I'm all over the place today. Not really good at HTTP. Thank you. I'm sorry. I fat fingered that. It's not even HTTP. That's just HTTP. HTTP 169.254.8.81, going after Metasploitable, and then that port was 8,000. Thank you very much. Yeah, so because this is one that I loaded on there. So this is just another website that is out there that as we're looking, we're trying to figure out, hey, what is there, what is present, what might be an entry mechanism. All right, let's look at some more. So 8009 Apache, 8022 Apache Tomcat, maybe a Coyote, a JSP engine out there. 8031 unknown. Ah, so I like this one, 8080. So I like to key on the 80s and the 8080 and the 443s. What's out there? This tells us that the version that we're looking at is a Sun Glassfish open source. Okay? Open source 4.0. That's lovely when you have that version type of information. Because again, you pivot, you check what exploit can I throw, and start throwing things. So port 8080, let's see what that looks like. Glassfish server is running. This might be another exploit that we're going to utilize to gain access to the system. I'm sorry, not an exploit, vulnerable system that we can use, vulnerable service that we can use to gain access to the system. 8181, 8383, Apache, lots of web services that are running on the different ports. And for each one, we just research further, just as we're doing, because you don't know which one's going to give you access. 9200. So NMAP is not sure, but this looks to be a web page. So let's reach out to that. So it is a web page, and it is providing us, this looks kind of like XML type of formatting. Yeah, it was like XML or JSON. Okay, more like JSON. Okay, so this says filter JSON. So JSON. It's like JSON documents on that some sort of website that's providing some information. So what does this mean? Perhaps there's a version, maybe. So I'll just Google this, like Lucene version 4.7, and say, what application provides a key of Lucene version 4.7? And perhaps that can tell us, oh, this specific version does an output of Lucene version 4.7. And now again, I have something to launch into my exploitation toolkit and throw at this system and see if I can gain access to it. Yeah. Yeah, so port 9999, another Abyss server, right? And this is even the administrator login. Nine, oops, did I miss that? Forbidden. No. Okay, so from here, I'm getting from, maybe I typed something in incorrectly, but login. So usually the login for the Abyss default is on port 9999. And then some things that Nmap could not determine. So here are a few other ports that are open, like Windows RPC, remote procedure call. Additional information that is like, I cannot determine, but hey, you can send this to us here. Maybe others have found it, or we can research further. So that's because the community is trying to help learn new things also. And I'm sure by now someone has found out what that information is. Aha! Oh, here we are. Operating system. So the operating system that we're scanning, it is deemed to be a Windows machine, Windows Server 2008 R2, release 2, 2012. Then the CPE is specific to like Windows, it was like Microsoft Windows, Linux, Ubuntu, like the operating system information is here. So this is nice. So very useful, necessary. We need to know the operating system. So now we're writing this down. Okay, I'm going after Windows Server 2008 R2 2012. What exploits exist for Windows Server 2008 R2 2012? And then hopefully that might give us some information to go after for that system. Okay. Now just a few more information. So clock skew. So looking at the clock time, this is net BIOS. Yeah, there it is. So this is usually net BIOS information that will return this type of details to you. NBT stat for the net BIOS or the NBT stat application protocol. All right, so net BIOS here, we have the system name. System name is Vagrant-2008 R2. That's the system name itself, which is cool. Like, I did not have that system name before, and now by running Nmap scan, we can procure this information. NetBIOS user, sometimes you get user information here. The MAC address is good. With MAC addresses, I might think of, well, maybe I can, mess with the MAC table or mess with the switch or whatever. Like, depends on the impact that we're trying to accomplish. But at least we do have MAC information that was returned from NetBIOS. There are other ways to find the MAC address, but this scan produces that for us. And then the OUI, your organizationally unique identifier, that's your first 3 bytes of a 6-byte MAC address. The first 3 bytes give information about the vendor if it's known in the database. So here, the vendor for this system is VirtualBox. VirtualBox, it's a virtual machine. So whenever we see that, you'll see VMware, VirtualBox, or like Qualcomm, Huawei, whoever. You'll see the vendors. Generally, if you see VirtualBox, VMware, you're on a virtual machine. You're going to start to see more and more of those as we start to virtualize more with internet services and internet systems. Other times, if you're scanning a hard box, or it could be a bridged adapter, then you'll see the actual name. You may see the name of the adapter. SMB information, right? OS. So here's more detailed information, even more detailed than what we have here. So the OS 2008. Standard 7601, Service Pack 1. I mean, this is nice. Even scan this system, I mean, it's contrived, it's made for us to be exploitable. But even as I look at that, I smile saying, wow, that is just nice to know. It's nice to have this. Because it's not always this pristine in the room. Computer name, Vagrant, NetBIOS, information Vagrant, and just null character at the end. Okay, system time, account used, authentication type if it's known, just whatever else is provided from this specific script, because it runs additional scripts, it sends us information here. All right, and at least that's one way. Well done. Congratulations, you looked through the Metasploitable 3 machine of doing a scan, and that's really how we look at results. You scan the whole thing, on the TVs, they'll do a scan like, there it is, there's the exploit. Like, no, you have to read it and see. So that's what we do. We put that level of detail, if not more detail, when you're actually trying to scan and figure out what is going to be your attack vector. So I hope that was useful so far. We identified just a couple of things that we would highlight in the slides, because we go through this at least, every time we do a scan, and then we start to plan like, okay, here are some services that we're going to go after. All right, let us pause there. Are there any questions? Yeah, and so Odd got. I'm sorry, I know I'm not saying your name right. I'm sorry about that. Your name is good, but now it doesn't always. So that's another thing. The scans, this is the science, but it's not always precise. On your scan, your Nmap could have lost a packet. It could have missed something. Something just might not have been there, or that service, for whatever reason, is like, oh, I'm gonna burp, and then it just did not provide the details that you were looking for at the time. So that's just something that happened. In the future, we would actually slow down the time. Sorry, we would slow down the time of the scans. The scans will be less intense, and so then hopefully we can like have more time to receive the packets that we're looking for. So you just repeat the scan again, slow it down. So I think we're at T4, T5 will probably produce even less results. Sorry, roundabout way just to say it happens. Scan again. Try slower, and based on any port that is there, we also try other mechanism to deduce what is that version. All right, so here we're just highlighting a few things. Okay, so some final words on these scans. This is only the very beginning. This is just the start. There are so many different flags to run. There are so many different things to test. So many different systems to go out there and scan. Scan. Check what you see only on the system that you have permission to scan, please. And we figure out how to sharpen our skills. We also figure out how to be comfortable in reading the Nmap scans. Because when we talk about exploiting, hacking, whatnot, Nmap is mentioned in the same sentence. And so, it's good for us to be comfortable and familiar with using Nmap. Know the flags that you like, and grow and expand from that point. And so I just say, this quote, and we might have it in other slides. But Rome was not built in a day. So if this is your first exposure to the scans and the activities that we're performing, like it's okay. It will take time to build that expertise. It will take time to build your experiment. It's built over that deliberate engagement to sharpen your skills. I have this now, but tonight, as an exercise for the expert, do additional scans. Scan your home machine that you're running on and see what it looks like. When you disconnect from the internet, disable your firewall. See what it looks like. Re-enable your firewall. See what it looks like. If you're still getting through from that Nmap scan, you might have something you need to check on. And that's just some of the things that we learn from these scans. So we are just about at the top of the hour. No problem at all. We made good time. And in fact, we ended up exactly where we wanted to end up at the end of this 4-hour session. I always like to include more details than what we're going to cover in case you like to go ahead or something happens. You can continue. Tomorrow we will pick up from part 2, and we'll do more advanced scanning, and then we'll move into the vulnerability scanning and enumeration as well, which gets us perfectly set up for the exploitation on Thursday. All right, so I will pause here and entertain any questions that we have at this time. Okay, so at least up front here, I'm not seeing any questions. And it's really important to be cognizant of time. So here, let's stop here, and we will continue. Well, for me, it's first thing in the morning, but we'll continue tomorrow. If you do need anything, please reach out to me, reach out to our team, and we'll address. Otherwise, it's been awesome having you today. I look forward to tomorrow, and we'll talk to you soon. Correct. And answering your question, yes, yeah. We'll get into search exploit tomorrow, hopefully at the end of tomorrow or Thursday for sure. We will definitely be covering it. Thanks everyone. See y'all tomorrow. You too, Nicholas. Thanks.